Welcome to the Hollywood Scholar. I'm Jed Morgan, and we have a very exciting stream for you guys tonight about a better Star Trek show than Star Trek has been in over a decade. I'm joined by an incredible panel tonight and really excited to get into it. But first, let's introduce some of these great panelists that I have. We've got Alexa from Phoenicia Rises. She's a co-host of mine over on the Firepod stream that I do on OBG70's channel. She's really big in aging culture, and it's really great to be here. And yeah, thanks for being here. How's it going?
I'm good. How about you guys?
I'm doing great. So this is your first experience into the Orville. So what are your overall thoughts of the Orville as a show? Just kind of fresh perspective into the series more than the rest of us.
Very fresh. Well, I think I might have mentioned this to you before. I watched a couple episodes when it first came out and then just kind of forgot about it, dropped it. And then people kept telling me to watch it because I love Star Trek, but life happens. And so I never got around to it. So I did come back and I've been refreshing myself on episodes. I haven't watched every single one yet, of course, but yeah, it's good. I definitely have, I told you, some mixed feelings about it, but it's also enjoyable. And it also reminds me not only of Star Trek, but a little bit of one of my favorite films, Galaxy Quest. So you guys might also agree.
Yes.
Well, she proves that we are not an echo chamber here. Her mixed feelings, it's great to have on here where we look forward to the discussion. And I think I share some of those mixed feelings, at least when it comes to these last two episodes. But real fast, I want to shout out Jaden Hamilton in the chat. I've been trying to convince him to watch Doctor Who for a while. So it's great that he's finally getting into it, getting addicted. And it looks like he's in season 3 with David Tennant and Martha.
Oh, no.
Great.
You made another victim.
And same thing I did to Bruh. I forced him to watch it, and now he's into it.
I love it.
Yeah. Well, we're also joined by Mike, OBG70. He was actually the co-host of the previous part 1 that we did over on his channel. That is linked in the description below. And how's it going, man? What'd you think of these 2 episodes?
Oh, rough. Yeah. Not my favorite 2 episodes, I gotta tell you that. Yeah, that first one we did, Jed, was just kind of a spur of the moment, if you remember. I'm like, hey, come on right now, let's talk about it. There was no planning behind it, and we just kind of talked about it a little bit. So go check that out, get some ideas of what we thought about the first 2 episodes. But episodes 3 and 4, we have not talked about together at all. We have no idea what each other thinks, and it's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into it.
Yeah, I wasn't too happy.
Shame.
All right. Well, we also have Mr. Isaac himself, and he actually has the honor of the one who introduced me to the show a few years back, and he's the one who got me hooked. So he's the reason we're doing the stream, basically. So it's great to have him on. He's been on a lot of my streams before, so it's always great to have him on board whenever he's free. So how's it going, man?
It's good, bro. It's good. I miss you, man. I miss you as a roommate.
I miss you too.
One day I'll move back into your TARDIS right there.
Yeah, standing room only.
20 standing room only. But yeah, man, I'm good. I honestly don't remember that much about like the first. I don't remember telling you about the Orville in the first place. I just remember seeing Seth MacFarlane, watching it, loving it, and I was like, dude, check it out. And I never would have thought to this day you would have been putting up streams about this show and inviting me on them, because I'm very flattered. This is like the first time really I'm on a stream and I'm actually kind of knowledgeable. Everything else I've been on, I'm like, everybody's talking about all these different things on like 80s and 60s, 70s flicks. And I'm just like, yeah. I'm like washing dishes during the stream, but no, I actually have headphones this time. I can't go anywhere. I'm ready to talk, baby.
Yeah, it's you're more prepared this time, so I appreciate that, and it's great to have you. Jaden Hamilton's in the chat again. He's asking who my favorite Doctor is. It's got to be Matt Smith. It's unpopular, but he's my favorite. But that's a discussion for another stream. We are also joined by the Mortality Lifeform, a bigger YouTuber in this sphere. Really excited to have him on. This is my first time officially meeting him, but we've been chatting a little bit. So it's great to finally have you on here, man. Thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Professional.
Professional, very professional. Yeah, his after shows, the moment the episode ends, are really must-see material. So if you guys are interested in that, go over to his channel, subscribe. And if you're staying up as late as I am to watch the episode, it's a great little thing to jump in on and take a look at what him and his co-hosts think about that. So
yeah, isn't there going to be a special guest star in this week's episode? Don't we know somebody that
Matt Damon
going to be on?
Matt Damon? Well, I don't think he's quite as big a star as Matt Damon, but I will be, joining for his next week's after show Wednesday at like midnight my time. So I'm really excited to stay up that late. No, it's a great panel, great show, and really excited to talk about next week's episode. So, looking forward to that. So if you want to see me and the Nerdporial getting it on, tune in his channel next week for that.
Phrasing.
I'm excited for that.
I've never been very good at phrasing, but we've got two very special episodes to talk about. They're probably the most conflicted I've ever been in an Orville episodes. These two are the ones that I have the most mixed feelings on. So I think we're going to have a really good discussion. We're going to start with Mortality Paradox and just kind of go through it. Conversation's going to go as it will, and then kind of do the latter half as Gently Falling Rain, but we can jump around as much as needed. So let's just start. My thoughts on Mortality Paradox. Overall, I think the end theme that they did in that final sequence when it was revealed who was behind all the hallucinations or whatever was a good idea and kind of an interesting philosophical question. But I think it needed to be spread out throughout the episode a little bit more. That would have really benefited it. Maybe have each scene of this maze or whatever be related to a specific person's fear, maybe. That way it could be like, hey, we're getting your most afraid state for this kind of feeling of death that they are wanting out of this. I think that would have tied it a lot more together and given it some character depth, which I value most. But those are just kind of my brief on the top thoughts about this episode. Does anybody else have anything that they thought about it specifically? Mortality Paradox.
I thought it was one of those typical episodes where, I think they were just playing with the idea that, most of the people watching the Orville are Star Trek fans, and Star Trek has covered a lot of ground. Like there's been time travel episodes, there's been episodes where they've been trapped on the holodeck. There's been episodes where they've dealt with a supreme being that will, put them through, their own little world of amusement. And this looked like a combination of all those things. Like they were trying to subvert, like throughout the episode, we thought for a second, maybe this was a holographic thing that was subverted. And it ended up being a Q/Nagilum like being that looked like someone that belonged in Tron. To be blunt about it. I mean, look how colorful she looked. I mean, if that's the price of immortality, heck, sign me up.
Well, I love the Oh, go ahead, bro.
No, you're fine. I was mostly just thinking about the episode of the planet that disappeared for 11 days, came back, and they had advanced, what was it, 300 years, 700 years?
700 years.
700 years?
700 years.
And I remember the end of that episode, they came back as the planet was just like this big, huey green, like my room. And they teleported onto the ship with Isaac, and they're basically like, we figured it out. Like we're like the OG, and I think that's mostly because of Isaac. Isaac went with them for 700 years, and so.
Sorry, go ahead. I'll let you finish.
You're good, because and at the end they're like, yeah, we're immortal. We're just messing with you, and all this crazy stuff. But I'm like, that would have never happened if Isaac didn't go with them.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be honest. This season has subverted my expectations. Like I've done several streams with other fans of this, and we've tried to predict what they were going to do this season. So far, I've been wrong on every front. But I was surprised that they followed up Mad Idolatry. Now, Mad Idolatry was, I'm sure if you've watched all of Star Trek, you know that was based off of a Voyager episode where the Doctor did the same thing that Isaac did. When they were stuck in orbit on this planet that had time go by much quicker for them. So for a day for Voyager was like 500 years, or maybe 50 years or something. Not as crazy, but it was the same idea. And I saw that, I was like, "Ooh, really?" And I didn't think they'd ever follow up on that. I thought it'd be one of those one and done deals. But no, they actually. I was impressed that they followed up that particular episode. I was like, where are they going with this episode? Like, first they're in a high school. Gordon gets beat up by bullies. I was like, what are they, in a Stephen King book?
That was weird.
and then we find out who Randall is. Randall is a half troll, half rancor on the football field.
Like that.
She literally put, like we saw in the
so
thing,
dumb.
She really picks up a bleacher and throws it at his cheek, like cool. it was a spear. I was like,
that was cool.
It was hilarious. I thought it was.
Yeah.
And they run into the school, and then they're on a plane. I was like,
I thought they were on Earth the whole time at some random high school, and then once it's
Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, and then the Star Wars character comes out of nowhere, and I'm like, okay, is George Lucas signed off for this?
I would have thought that they were like, if you watch enough Star Trek, I would have thought that was simply Planet Los Angeles or Planet California.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is what the Orville.
Like
that's like all the new Trek stuff. They shoot everything on a soundstage. Everything looks fake, and like I'm just I like, it's weird because when I was a kid I used to complain like, why do they keep showing like these familiar places? Now I miss it. As an old Trek fan, I miss Planet Los Angeles. I miss Planet California. I want Vasquez rocks. I want my Vasquez rocks in every episode that has a mountain. And an alien.
Well, you said something interesting there, is subverting expectations. Now, that's normally like a bad phrase in our sphere on YouTube, usually a signal for bad things. But do you think this was subverting expectations in a positive way versus, the Ruin Johnson type of way of approaching things?
Yeah, I think it because it makes sense. That's all it takes. It makes sense. It makes sense in the fact that they were willing to explain it. A lot of times when like, let's say Mr. Johnson subverts expectations, he does it in a very boring way, like making Luke, in my opinion, making Luke grumpy and giving up on everything just to somewhat redeem himself at the end was a boring concept. They could have went the adventure route. Like, why was he there? Maybe he was seeking something to defeat this new threat. It could have been something cool like that. Maybe there was something the ancient Jedi encountered that could have, that the Snoke guy who just came out of the woodwork could have done.
Many options.
They could have went the adventure way, make the viewer, feel like a kid again. No. They took the boring and easy path. And that leads to the dark side. I'm sorry.
It does. And it's kind of what we're seeing with Disney Star Wars. It's just Star Wars dark side is basically what it is, because they have no morality. But that's enough about Star Trek. So we've heard from us three quite a bit. Let's hear from the other two. Alexis, what did you think of this episode and like the concepts and philosophy or whatever?
It did remind me of, despite it being problematic in a lot of ways, the original Star Trek series is my favorite. And it reminded me a lot of that. I mean, Next Gen had these kind of episodes too. Like things like the Robin Hood episode, and stuff like that. But it had that same sort of feel to it, and the the whole like the being comes at the end and like expositions it to death in a very haughty high horse is very old Star Trek. So I was like, I kind of hoping that that's what they were going for, because if they were trying to make me take that seriously, it would be really annoying. But if it's more like, yeah, take it seriously a little bit, but it's also like kind of just making fun of that whole concept of, because that would happen like at the end of every episode where they'd go to some planet and then this haughty angelic being would be like, because of your violence, humans, blah, 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 blah. And that's kind of how I felt like this character, the Tron girl, was, you know, at the end of this episode. Because it's just like, yeah, they didn't have any, like you were mentioning, it would have been better to splice in some buildup with this reveal back to that episode where Kelly becomes God, basically, you know, on the other planet. And yeah, it would have been nice to like kind of splice that in there a little bit more to get hints at like, but then but when you tack it on at the end, it's just a little bit hokey like the old show. You know, so that's something where I was kind of like, okay, if they're trying to do that kind of tongue in cheek, I can accept that, and I think that's fun. But if they really wanted us to take that seriously, it's not happening for me. But yeah, otherwise, like, yeah, the fun moments I really enjoyed, like, yeah, her picking up the bleacher was really fun, and just like certain scenes like that, you know. But yeah, I like the concept of exploring everyone's fears or those near-death experiences, but they could have had higher stakes, because I mean, I know high school and middle school suck, but I don't think I was going to die there, I guess, unless you have to really like turn up the heat a bit. So that'd be like my main. If you didn't give
your lunch money away, you would die.
Yeah.
Like poor Gordon.
Yeah, well, we didn't have a Randall, in our, you know.
Yeah,
I did.
Randall,
I
he
did.
hangs out
Very
behind
unique.
the bleachers. Why should I pay him? You must pay him.
All right, well, he'll eat you alive.
You have a 5 head.
Well, I mean, you are bald. Here, if I do that,
well, it kind of like it's a little bit better, yeah. Well, going off what Alexis said, yeah, I definitely thought the high school was a little bit underwhelming once you realized what it was all about, is to make them afraid. I thought the lake part was the most one that kind of got that concept of we want to make them as terrified as possible. I thought that sea monster looked beautiful. For a TV budget, the CGI was pretty good, whereas Randall wasn't great. So I wonder how they chose all that. But yeah, that sea monster I'm very impressed with.
When I saw Randall, I was like, wait a minute, is this like an anime where they're stuck in a video game or something? I'm like, what is that? I'm like, what is going on here?
I'm always trying to like nitpick films whenever they make a big change in scenery. I'm like, they ran out of money, or they can't pay rent. So when they got to that high school, I'm like, yep, I've seen that in movies before. Like I've seen them use that set somewhere in California, and I was just like, they're just messing around, saving some money. But then when Randall came out of nowhere, I was like, well, somebody found an extra $10,000.
Yeah,
because that's pretty good.
Right. Well, we haven't heard from Mike yet. Mike, what are your thoughts on Mortality Paradox and the whole concept?
I thought the writing was atrocious, honestly. I thought it was some of the worst writing I've seen in Orville since the first episode of the first season. Tron Girl, as we're going to call her now, she needs to go back to high school acting class. You know, she's atrocious. She's so bad. She has to wear the wedges because her legs are too short, so she looks awkward if she was on flats. So she has her feet like this. And I also am kind of curious about, like, this is the idea of the ultimate in evolution, right? The species has gone way ahead. And I noticed the color that they chose for the race of the characters is as close to paper white as possible. What are they trying to say there? And blue, and the blue eyes, the eyes that glow blue. It's like, okay, I'm white with blue eyes. So does that mean that I'm superior to everyone that isn't? Am I evolved hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years further than everybody else? I just thought it was kind of silly. And the fact that her clothing, it was dumb. And then I absolutely detest the dream within a dream within the dream within the dream within the dream bullshit that we've seen in Star Trek forever. Where it's like, are you really stuck in the holodeck still? Are we out this time? How many Star Trek episodes do you actually wonder at the end as they fly away? Okay, are they really still stuck in this? Are we really still in this? Are we being tricked? And so that's what we got at the end of this one too. And I'm just, I'm like, okay, you guys are using Star Trek ideas and you're playing around and okay. But I felt like I was in a Stargate episode, not a Star Trek episode or not an Orville episode. And I've seen this episode before. I've seen it probably 20 times.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I felt about this one. And I hated it. I absolutely detested this whole thing. Start to finish, inside and out.
Yeah.
There are Stargate episodes like this? I've not seen Stargate. That's why I'm asking.
Yep.
Oh, I can't wait. Oh, I can't wait now.
Absolutely.
I wasn't convinced by the end. I was kind of just waiting for the twist. I was like, okay, because I was not convinced that technology was the
Kalon deal.
The Kalon. I was not convinced. And I was just like waiting for some sort of twist to happen. And here's my theory too, is that when you were saying that girl's acting, because I was just like, oh no, they found some 19-year-old girl who's willing to sit in a makeup chair for 2 hours. I think she's the same actress as the porcupine girl from episode 1 in the last season. Remember the porcupine girl that the engineer was sleeping with?
Yeah, it was like that. It was like a science fiction way of expressing S&M. That's what I think it was.
Yeah. Oh, here she is. What the heck kind of?
I can't stop looking at her shoes.
Well, here's the other thing.
I didn't even notice that.
About this character is like she gets, she does the whole high horse speech of like all the labels you have, husband and man and all this stuff don't matter. Yet she's like clearly an uber feminine form, uber feminine everything. So clearly something does matter. And I was thinking of, even though I've woefully not read these books, but I know Isaac Asimov. Oh dear. Isaac Asimov has like a whole species that's like a unisex species. So you'd think you'd make them, if that's the point you're trying to make, you'd make it look a little bit more like that. But yeah, it's
androgynous.
Yeah, but in this one, she actually looks very much like an old Star Trek character. It almost looks like she's even wearing bell bottoms. So it's just kind of like, and then the platforms. It's not so much. It's like you're trying to make this point in a very fun way. You got to go all the way with it. Yeah. Yeah, that's what she was saying. Yeah, Captain Explorer husband. Those labels don't matter.
Do you think the two-dimensional people that were encountered, I believe, in season 1, have anything to do with this?
Oh yeah,
that would have been interesting.
She's probably their planet.
I'll tell you one thing though that's positive about this: the cosplay that's going to be at the conventions is going to be really hot. There's going to be a lot of girls dressed up in this, and I'm going to be like, okay.
You really think
it's all worth it?
Yep. Those fiber optics that you can get from Amazon for $8.99 or whatever it is, and you just weave them into your clothing. This is going to be a cosplay thing for sure.
The most
unworthy,
most loved cosplay costume.
So I got a question. So do you think she's going to be more like a Q-like character, or do you think she's going to be more like, let's say, Nagilum from season 2 of TNG? Because Nagilum was the one that did the experiments on the crew. And in this case, the crew were like the 4 of them were basically lab rats to be being tested.
Right.
And then they would merge with them the moment that they had that experience. Then they would merge, or they merged with them. That's why their eyes went all glassy. Was when those beings would merge or become part of them to experience that fear.
I think it should be more of a mix of the two, more than anything, because she has very different motives, so that'll change her approach. Like, she doesn't seem to come at it as I'm bored kind of way or any sadistic pleasure out of this. If she were, I definitely lean more towards Nagiyam or Q, but I think she's going to continue her experiments because this was very inconclusive. I mean, you just randomly throw people in random scenarios and they kind of feel something. I feel like she's nowhere close to fully experiencing what she's looking for.
I kind of felt, I also felt Metrons from Arena, from TOS, and the Organians. Those were 2 other species that were well ahead of humanity. The Organians just showed themselves as old men just for the sake of lower aliens that came to visit. Whereas the Metrons were kind of in their own space, and if anybody came in, they basically forced, if there was a conflict or anyone brought violence, they would force settlement. If you guys seen those 2 TOS episodes,
it's been a long time.
Yeah. I'm kind of wondering if that her form is just for the benefit to give
Mm-hmm.
Ed and normal people something to talk to or something to communicate with.
I think that was definitely implied. I think it was definitely implied that she didn't need to exist like this, at least.
Because I'm curious
So-
if they've evolved or in their case, manufactured their evolution
Mhm.
to not have to deal with physical bodies.
Physical form.
Right.
Mhm.
Into the energy form of
That'd be
energy.
very interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
pure
that would
energy,
be
pure
very
thought.
interesting to explore. I think that sums up a lot of the problems with this episode is there's a lot of potential in everything they set up, but they didn't decide to explore any of these concepts that they had, any of the opportunities. It's just like, oh, we have idea. It's like, no, take one of these ideas and explore it rather than just throwing as much of the dartboard as possible. I think that's where this
That's
really
the problem
gets
with
down.
that's the
in
problem with New Trek and current Star Wars. They throw a lot
Yeah.
of stuff and
Yeah.
there's very little payoff
Mhm.
because they don't
Hey,
resolve
Jed, can
everything.
you share this real quick? I just want to say one more thing. I think one of the more critical problems I have with this show is that the glass. There's no way this thing doesn't tip over. Like you can't even touch that without it falling over and spilling.
There's no base.
But
There's no base.
I guess not.
Yeah.
Well, actually, that scene does remind me of something. So, of writing, I prefer character writing above all else. That's why Electric Sheep is probably my favorite episode of the Orville in total. Just the character study of Isaac was incredibly well done, in my opinion, and I really enjoyed it. And that last scene that he was just showing us was my favorite scene of the episode because it had one line that really got us into the mind of Ed. So, the biggest thing that I think current Star Trek misses out on is Star Trek is about exploration first.
I'll bring
above
it back if
everything
you like.
else.
There you go.
They're yeah, perfect. Thank you. They're not military, even though they fill those roles sometimes. They're always wanting to explore. Their curiosity is what drives them. And current Star Trek is more soap opera. It sucks that a show called Star Trek Discovery is more soap opera than actually about discovery. But Ed's one line where he's like, I don't want to live forever. I mean, I do want to live forever. And they're like, why? Why would you want that? He's like, I just want to see what happens. That simple line, I just want to see what happens, does
100%.
more work for his character than so much of what current writers in any show or movie seem capable of these days. It was just a few words made us understand Ed's character so concisely and so well. And it's always what motivates him. Even when we get into Gently Falling Rain or the previous episode, Shadow Realms, he just wanted to know what was out there in the Shadow Realms. He just is driven by curiosity. Maybe that's to a fault sometimes, but it just really impressed me how concisely that they had this character moment in an episode that was otherwise devoid of character work. So I don't know how anyone else felt about that or if they care about character work as much as I do.
I liked it too. I mean, it's moments like these that are very lacking in a lot of other shows. And I swear, writers should learn from this. By the way, Ed saying that made me think of a Star Trek character saying the exact same thing. Riker says that at the end of Star Trek Generations when Picard, right after Picard buries Kirk and he gets rescued. Spoiler alert. And the Picard ends up having a heart on heart with Riker, talking about they lost that Enterprise D is pretty much destroyed. And he's like, he brings up mortality. He's like, we're only mortal. And Riker's like, speak for yourself, sir. I plan to live forever. Because, Riker, of course he's going to live forever.
Yeah, he was definitely the Jim Kirk of TNG, and I felt like that's a shared mentality between the two.
We've had this.
But yeah,
debate.
that was a great.
We've had this debate before. He kind of is, and he kind of isn't. If you watch Best of Both Worlds, especially the two-parter with the Borg and how Picard becomes Locutus, gets assimilated for the first time, we learned quite a bit about Riker, and he's not quite Kirk. He's I think he's his own character. And some people,
he's the archetype.
Some people think he should have taken over after, Picard should have died at that point, and then he would have been the new captain. I think that would have been an interesting idea, but we wouldn't have had the inner light.
I need me some Picard though. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we wouldn't have gotten the inner light or all good
captain.
Things. So, just saying. So
it's one of those things where you're like, you're glad. Yeah, it's kind of one of those things. Yeah, you're glad it worked out the way it did, but you'd be interested to see how it went the other way. It's like Doctor Who, Christopher Eccleston. We all wish he would have gotten more time as the Doctor, but it's like if we did, we wouldn't get David Tennant in the same way. So it's kind of a give and take. So I can definitely see that. Yeah, Riker is definitely his own character. I just mean he fills that archetype of like a rogue who more womanizer and just some of the basic stuff.
And he's the one that goes
But
on
he's
all
still-
he leads the away missions.
Mhm.
He basically leads all the away
Mhm.
missions, whereas in the original series, Kirk, Spock, and McCoy would go to the planet. And if you were a security officer, if you were a low officer and you went with them, you're screwed.
You did. Well, that actually ties into a point that Mike and I made in part 1, is that it drives us both crazy where all the commanding officers go down an away mission. In TNG, they knew
Mhm.
at least keep one, either the captain or the first officer on the bridge at all times.
Yeah.
This one did the same thing. It's like captain, first officer, go down in the away mission. It's like, no, fuck. Got to
I
leave
lo-
one of them
but
at the bridge.
I did like how Lamar was in command. It reminded me of
And it
all
was
those
cool.
times Scotty, because Scotty was always the third after
Mm.
Kirk and Spock to be in command of
Right.
the Enterprise. And so Scotty had some great moments as the commander.
Mhm.
There was one episode, A Taste of Armageddon, where they go to this planet and they encounter this race that fights their wars with computers. So if their computer says that if their computer tells them that this place was bombed, even though it wasn't physically, they have to declare all the people living there casualties, and the people living there have to go report to disintegration chambers to die. And so Scotty is left in command. So Kirk and Spock are detained on the planet. Scotty's left in command, and he has this ambassador with him that's outranks him. This ambassador, they're talking to the officials, and the officials are like, oh no, nothing's going on. We're just talking to them. And the ambassador believes them, and Scotty's like, no, I'm not lowering the shields. Sorry. So I mean, yeah, like there were some really great moments. I know I'm kind of going off on a tangent here with
I have a
Hey,
question.
it's totally fine.
I have a question for anyone on the panel. What do you guys make of this? It's not really a trope, but whatever it is, where they're in the high school, for example, and they're all wearing their uniforms,
And nobody
and
knows.
you even have some aliens, but none of the kids in this 1980s era school or whatever year it's supposed to take place see them as anything different than each other, like another classmate. They don't see what they are. Doesn't that send off red flags? Like, do you not think, well, this can't be real? Obviously, something's going on.
Yeah.
Because they
Like they
see
were-
us differently, or on the airplane, they end up on the airplane. How did these people get on the
And no one
airplane?
that cared.
What's this weird
I
looking
guess
They're
creature?
NPCs.
Yeah, part
Right.
of the holograph,
Well,
I guess, just made them
yeah.
see them as just normal people. Because
Mhm.
if I was a high school bully, I wouldn't assume that a guy in a uniform that looks like he's in his mid 40s is a student
Right.
that I have to beat up to tell him to give money.
Yeah.
to.
Well, it's Gordon.
Well,
Come on.
Yeah. Yeah, you
And those are some
it's a punch
cooperative
to the face.
students too. Those are some cooperative kids, because they're like, "Hey, can you tell us about this?" "Oh, sure. Let's sit there and talk about it for a little bit." It's like nobody says,
Mhm.
like, "How do you not know this already? Who are you? Go away."
I
Yeah.
thought it was
You're-
weird
They did that.
the time too, like the time frame. Like you were saying, you thought it was like 80s. I was thinking 90s, but then a kid was referencing TikTok in it, and I was
21st
like,
century.
oh.
They said
Okay.
21st century high school.
Oh,
Yeah.
21st century. Yeah.
Yeah, so they made it really like blanket.
Well, it's not the 80s then. Yeah, right. So
Yeah.
whatever it is.
Stranger Things.
I see a guy wearing polo shirt and khakis. I'm just thinking 80s, but
Well,
Whatever it
it
is.
looked like, I guess, early 2000. I mean, it reminded me of when I was in high school. So
Yeah, me too.
Jake from State Farm before he got his job.
Yeah, but then then they talk about TikTok, and that's something this show does a lot.
Oh, that was cringe.
One of my friends
That was
recommend
cringe.
or like brought up how they brought up Dora the Explorer, and she's like, "Would they really be talking about this like 100 years later?" I don't think so.
Mhm.
Well, I guess Ed's got good taste. Or
Yeah.
they all have good taste.
Yes, he does.
I mean, dude, the last episode had showed them playing Annie in Broadway. I can't wait to talk about that.
No, I'm excited to talk about that.
Yeah,
too.
this is definitely
the
look at
se-
the way these people are dressed. It's
You're
just
like,
Britney
right
Spears
in
era.
front of my locker.
Well, if there's a giant
Yeah, that's
alien
not what
monster,
Kirk
Randall, then I guess they must have some other alien species in their planet too that they're not surprised by
Maybe.
seeing. I don't know.
I feel like did any of you guys see the new Thor comic of what if Miles Morales was Thor? I just had the thought that this is basically the same thing. It's like an adult today. This is what they think kids today look like and act like. They dress like they did in the 80s, but they talk about TikTok all the time. And it's just this weird amalgamation of stereotypes. I don't know if you saw that comic book, but it's pretty bad.
That guy that I showed that picture he was dual strapping it, 2-strap in his backpack. I didn't know that was a controversial thing until I saw 21 Jump Street.
I was thinking the
The
same
movie?
thing.
Nobody's one strapping
You
it.
gotta one strap it, bro.
Nobody's one strapping it.
Well, during the whole bully scene where Gordon's getting bullied, I thought the entire time it's like, oh, all right, they're in the bathroom. They're going to pan a shot over to the mirrors that are right there and show them in the reflection as like teenagers dressed like teenagers.
Right.
I thought that was going to explain everything. The whole time, as soon as he got pressed up against the wall, I thought it was just going to drift a little bit and he's going to be like, what the fuck? And it never happened. I think that would have just been a really... I thought that would be a really easy explanation. 1-2 frames, enough to really sell why these kids aren't acting like this is weird.
And plus, while I'm on the same boat too, as far as like, yeah, it could have been the 90s and 80s, because bullies back then would completely, they're like, bullies now would not go out of their way to try to make somebody's face bleed out of 3 different holes, because they beat the crap out of him and tried drowning him in the toilet. I'm like, those aren't bullies nowadays.
Yeah, nobody even knows what a swirly is these days. So,
right?
Yeah,
I have a teenager in high school, and I could ask her if I could see her out there. I think
ask her if she knows what a swirly is.
I asked her, "Is there bullying at your school?" And she says, "No." Hold on,
there's cameras now in school. We didn't have that even. So. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and bullying is evolved. Just like in 21 Jump Street, it's more psychological, and it's all the cool kids being like, "Ooh, you're not organic. You're not a vegan.
Yeah, you have 1,000. You only have 500 followers."
And with social media now, yes, it's mostly online. It's safer than.
All right, she confirms she's seen some fights, but no bullying.
Because everybody takes out their phones now. Everybody, like, if you get into a fight or a bully, like, there's gonna be a bunch of people gathered around. They're all gonna take out their phones and record it.
Yeah, well, and it's definitely all social media, because my cousin's daughter, is always concerned about Instagram and she's like really
reputation destruction is the new bullying. Yeah,
I am so glad I didn't give a crap about any of that, because I wasn't there when I was growing up. So yeah.
Well, I was homeschooled too, so I didn't really have to worry about that either.
So lots of bullying.
I grew up in this era of phones. Lots of bullying. Yeah. And my siblings and I, we had a few hospital visits. We were crazy. But
yeah.
One other positive thing that I wanted to bring up, it was a brief moment, and it technically didn't happen, but at the time I really was impressed with it, is a lot of sci-fi and really just TV shows in general. They introduce something for an episode and then they forget about it till it's relevant again. But this episode made the point of bringing back up Charlie's innate xenophobia against Kalons. It was just a brief moment where she's like, do you really want to trust Isaac that this is all fake? And I just really appreciate that. It's like, hey, she is a consistent character through all of it. And I've been really impressed with her. She's very new to the crew, but she's already made quite the impact, and she's very three-dimensional character and consistent throughout the whole thing. And a consistent character is so rare these days. And even if it's in negativity, like she is.
I thought it was also a misdirect to see who was a fake, because I knew somebody was a fake, and I was thinking it was her when she said that, like she was trying to point the finger at him as the fake, and and then later it's revealed who it is. But that's what I thought. I mean, they're probably using something true about her, but I thought, oh, is she actually not who she's supposed to be? It's just someone in her body. Like that was like my first thought. She was going so hard at him, like, no, it's him. So.
Speaking of Charlie, I'm predicting a future episode, and this is another trope in science fiction, especially in Trek. I'm predicting they're going to do a enemy mine type of episode where Isaac and Charlie are going to be trapped on a planet by themselves, struggling to survive. I call
Don't bring up enemy mine to Jed.
I liked it. So I'd never seen it before. Then a few weeks ago, I did a.
That's not how I remember that conversation going.
Adam the Renaissance Nerds. We did a show on a few weeks ago together on Adam the Renaissance Nerds channel. But yeah, like I was very conflicted on the movie, to say the least. But I did enjoy it overall. But yeah, that would be a great way to bring it the same type of way they did in the movie. Yeah, have Charlie get over her hatred. And I think it's very surprising, at least in today's Hollywood, that it was the woman who's in a completely irrational position, but justified at the same time. Like, I completely understand why she hates him, and it's not necessarily wrong from her perspective. There's complexity to it. And that's something that really impressed me in Electric Sheep, and part of the reason why I thought it's the best episode of the Orville so far. But I just liked that they brought it up again.
Yeah, and just the idea, like, they never really dealt with, because Isaac is an AI character. It was interesting to just bringing up the idea of what if an AI, like, what if Data committed suicide? What, like something that could be reversed, obviously, but they've never really dealt with it the way that they did in Electric Sheep on Star Trek at all. I mean, there were episodes of the original series where Kirk told a computer to, kill itself because, it's evil, obviously. But that's beside the point. We care about Isaac. We the audience care about Isaac, and Isaac's one of the main characters of the show. So it was a very interesting idea to see how people would react to a suicide, especially if someone who was kind of responsible for the deaths of many other people. But as far as I'm concerned, I don't think Isaac was responsible. I think he was. They were screwing with his brain on Kalon, and they kind of woke him up, or they did something that was they did something that he was different, and it was because of young Ty that he came back, or he came out of it. He went back to how he was before. Hence why in like the episode, the end of season 2, where Isaac and all those people are not on the ship, or Claire and her kids and Ed and all of them are not on the ship. The Kalon succeeded in destroying Earth. So I mean,
in the alternate timeline.
It just takes in an alternate timeline. It just takes a single individual to drive the fate of the universe. In this case, it was the littlest kid. It was the littlest person on the Orville. It was little Ty.
Good.
That was a great arc over those 3 episodes, Identity and that last one. And Electric Sheep is so good. I loved Electric Sheep because suicide for an android is a very interesting concept, and suicide is something that most shows want to avoid, rightfully so, because of a tough subject matter. But I felt like they dealt with it very well and explained why an android would want to commit suicide. Like, for someone without emotions, you have to justify that a lot to make it make sense. But I feel like they went the extra mile to really sell the idea of why he would want to. And God, I love that episode.
And what made it even more intriguing was that it was Charlie. Only Charlie was the one that was capable of fixing his pathways, and Charlie has immense hatred for him. There was an equivalence in TNG season 3. There was an episode called The Enemy, where they have a Romulan that's in the process of dying and needs a blood transfusion, and for some reason, maybe because the script says so, only Lieutenant Worf, the Klingon, can save his life. And Worf is like, I am not doing this. I will not save a Romulan. Romulans murdered my family. Why should I do that? Yeah. And the crew, they're like Picard and Crusher, they're trying to tell him, hey, you're saving a life. I mean, it's just a life. And then he considers it. Then he goes and talks to the Romulan. The Romulan's like, I'd rather die than be saved by the likes of you. And then the Romulan dies. I was just like, wow. And it made me think of that when this whole thing with Isaac happened. But unlike the Romulan, who was not a main character in TNG, Isaac was going to come back.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was really interesting that Marcus was the only one who could get Charlie to change her mind. Someone who had at least equivalent hate in her eyes as her towards Isaac. And that interaction I thought was very good, and the only one who could have convinced her otherwise. So maybe she was wrong.
Yeah, I was surprised. I mean, I was initially surprised at the idea that Marcus was the one that did that. But then again, the episode opens with Marcus dreaming about the battle, having a nightmare about the battle. So it was obviously going to be him that drew those things on in the astrophysics lab, not the astrometrics lab, the astrophysics lab. Remember, this is the Orville. It's not Star Trek. So, So I was asking myself, like, was there any hints of this at the end after the Identity 2-parter and episodes after that Marcus had this intense hatred, and I couldn't find anything.
Yeah, no, I felt like Identity should have been pushed closer to the end of the season, except for that alternate universe one. Those like 2 that were slotted in between just felt really random, and the emotional beats of Identity were completely ignored. So they didn't even reference Marcus in that way.
So I'm glad they did. I'm glad they addressed the fallout from that in the beginning of the season. So
all right. I think it's getting close to getting into the more controversial episode, but does anyone have any final thoughts on Mortality Paradox? Anything they want to add? Alexis, do you have anything?
No, I think I pretty much said everything I thought about that one. So
all right, perfect. Anyone else have anything that they want to say about Mortality Paradox?
I'm kind of curious.
Mike, want to yell about it again?
I'm kind of curious what they're going to do with this character, Denal, I think is her name. Denal. I don't know if she's going to appear like Q and make them do a whole bunch of weird stuff, go on weird adventures in her micro universes, as she calls it. Or maybe
I think it's
or maybe she'll come in and save everybody from the Kalon. Maybe
that's what I was wondering too.
Click,
yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was wondering. Does she have a side? Is she going to be, ambivalent? Like what?
I'm going to do a Picard. I need you. From Q.
Well, yeah, definitely with the fallout with the Krill in the next episode, maybe she's the only one who can really save the Union in the war with the Kalon. So that would be interesting if they set it up properly.
I kind of hope that's
maybe
not
have
the
like
case, I kind of hope that's not the case.
Yeah.
But if they do it, they have to do it in a good way. Like it has to be like a super duper.
Well, do you remember that
appeal?
Next Generation episode where the couple's on the planet by themselves, but the female part of it actually doesn't exist?
Yeah.
That guy's like super powerful, and you find out that he was so angry at the whatever race it was that wiped out the planet that he just wiped the entire species out. And whatever that species is, you ask, well, can we borrow your power for just like a second? Because the Borg are coming, these things. It'd be interesting if something like that happened in Orville, if they weren't afraid to do that. Like, let's just get rid of the whatever they are.
The thing was, I think the thing was he wasn't all powerful because he couldn't reverse what he did. Like,
did he want to though?
Huh?
Did he want to?
Yeah, I think he did. He regretted what he did. He regretted what he did, and but he couldn't change it. Like he couldn't
you can't make life. You can only destroy it. Right. Okay.
Like she was a fake. She wasn't even a real being. She was fake.
Yeah.
Like a hologram almost.
Right. Yeah. I see your point. So, you can't create the life. You can only kill it.
Well, I mean, it would have to be from his. He would have to know everything about it, and he doesn't know everything about it. It would be if he were to put it. It's like Humpty Dumpty. You can't put Humpty Dumpty back together again in this case because he would be recreating it from what is in his. Well, he's incorporeal, so I don't know if he has a brain or he has something like that. Something that allows him to think.
Yeah.
So he wouldn't know it. He wouldn't know exactly what to put back together. I mean, everything in the universe is unique. So
okay.
Well, I feel like
that's an interesting idea, though.
I feel like I'm watching the Vision battle in WandaVision right now. You guys are so philosophical. I'm writing my notes down, getting more out of you guys in college.
Can I be the villain? Can I be the bad one?
Which one was the bad one?
I think it was the silver one.
You think?
I used to play as the silver Vision in the old Avengers arcade game. That's where I first heard of Captain America.
Oh, yeah?
Marvel was not a big thing in the early 90s, unless it was like, arcade
Spider-Man.
game or video game or a comic or a cartoon like Spider-Man or X-Men.
Or the X-Men. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, X-Men.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean to switch you guys around. I'm just going back and forth between saying goodbye to my fiance who's just going to Phoenix right now. So
congratulations.
I like kind of stuff.
You're not coming with her?
Thank you.
You're not coming with her?
Will I go to Phoenix right now? Absolutely not.
I think the 8-ball would be more snarky than that. It'd be like, don't count on it or something.
Well, there's a few of them. I just can't get them the face
You
up.
wish.
This one's kind of broken anyway. Anyway.
All right, perfect. So let's follow up with Gently Falling Rain. So this episode, I think, is definitely going to be one of the most controversial, especially on our sphere on YouTube. There's a debate to be had, let's say. I definitely don't agree with people taking it as far as they did. I still felt like it was story first, besides one scene, which we'll get into later. That one scene was way over the top. But overall, I still really enjoyed this one and thought it dealt with some interesting concepts. And the father-daughter scene, I love that scene so much. But let's get into it. At first, I want to say that I liked the Ginger Annie. I wanted my Ginger Annie. I didn't want no modern remake of it. Yeah, as long as she's ginger, she can be a Romulan for all I care, or a Kalon. She's got to be ginger.
I love how
you said earlier you had some thoughts.
The sun comes out tomorrow, and the Krill are like, they're like looking at each other, like, what are they talking? What are they spouting off here? This is not cool. Because the sun represents death and destruction for their species. Because The sun kills them.
They thought it was a horror.
Vampires.
They thought it was like a horror
dark
film
prophecy.
or something like that.
Yeah, dark prophecy.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I really wanted to be brought up like at the end of the episode. It's like the sun will come out tomorrow on Kalon with Talaya in charge or something like that. Like one of the guys there makes a call back to it. And it's like Talaya is the sun coming out tomorrow. Just way over dramatic.
Well, but it was
That would be
correct
funny.
though. It was correct because it ended up they killed the chancellor and all the other stuff that happened. So I thought it was actually like a pretty funny, clever way of doing that. But I didn't think about it till after the show was over. Yeah, because I was like, why did they make such a point of this? And then it's clear. Yeah.
So once I heard Krill first, I was like, oh no. I'm like, oh no, they're going here because I mean the thing was a Discovery with the Klingons in the very first episode did the exact same thing. The writers portrayed the Klingons as people that follow a particular combination of red and yellow type of person, and they're the worst, they're the scum of the universe. Isolationist and pure evil. I was kidding.
Yeah,
but that's how they think of it. So I was like, okay, but then again, at the same time, this is the Orville. They are not nearly as bad about this as New Trek. So I decided to keep listening.
I always thought the Krill were supposed to be the Romulans.
The Krill are
I always saw more in common with the Romulans.
The Krill are basically from episode 6, the episode where we meet Talaya. They're basically they're like the religious right. I'm thinking they're based on the religious right, maybe even some Islam. I'm not sure, but doing bad things, isolationist things in the name of Avis or the name of God. It was the same idea. So I'm not religious myself, but I grew up going to church. I grew up around a lot of people, a lot of Christians, and it's just it's not all bad. It's not all bad. There's a lot of positive. They do a lot of positive. A lot of good things in this world happen because of devout Christians and devout religion or devout other faiths. Love. Love your enemy. Love your neighbors yourself.
We try our best.
Exactly. Nobody's perfect.
Right. Well, I didn't necessarily take it as trying to make a statement on it, even back in season 1, because yes, extremist religions have been a sci-fi trope since the beginning, and it's just an interesting way of showing what extremism can do on any side, because like you're saying, it could be representative of a lot of different religions. It's just what dogma can do in its most extreme form. So I didn't feel like it was over the top or heavy-handed like most Hollywood stuff would be. Like if this were on Discovery, they would have made it so explicit that you're banging your head against the table. But I felt like them portraying the Krill this way was in a story first. Hey, what concepts can we get out of this? What stories can we get out of this? What characters? So even back in season 1, it didn't bother me, and it really didn't bother me in this one either, even though this one's definitely going to be a lot more controversial in the sense that you're talking about.
What was funny was I knew what was going to happen. Once we saw it, once she said the Krill first, I'm like, oh no, they're going to go this route first, because after that with the whole Annie and with the whole they're having dinner with the Krill at the dinner table at the Union headquarters. It was sparking Star Trek 60 on Discovered Country, where they had the Klingon delegation on board the Enterprise. They were drinking and they were having a discussion about potential peace and everything. I was like, maybe they're going to go this path. Maybe that one scene, that one rally scene was just the one thing that was kind of drawn from real world politics.
Yeah. That seemed very generic.
That wasn't quite the case.
That speech I am very conflicted on. It was just very generic more than anything else. Like rhetoric we've heard before, so that one was definitely
it was same as the Remain Klingon from Discovery. It was the exact same speech that what was his name? I can't think of his name. The leader of the Klingons that got killed like literally in the first episode. Kaval or not Kaval. I can't think of his name. But yeah. And the whole Remain Klingon and saying, oh, the Federation are going to take away our culture and they're going to do this and they're going to do that. And I'm just like, oh, come on.
Yeah. Well, to talk about a positive briefly. Oh, go ahead, bro, before we move on.
No, it's okay. I'm just like, dang it. I really got to watch Star Trek if I'm going to keep hanging out with you.
It's great.
The movies,
Before 2005.
Yeah, TOS and the original 6 movies. The original 6 movies are fantastic. And
You're telling me
you're telling me
5. You're telling me there's more than just Chris Pine?
Who's Chris Pine?
Yeah, I'm not sure what you're talking about there.
There was a guest star in the original series. His name was Philip Pine. He plays Colonel Green. Maybe you're talking about him. Maybe he's related to him.
That's the only Pine we know about.
Yeah. There's more than Chris Pine, and he doesn't ride motorcycles and doesn't run. His Chris Pine's Kirk is more like Indiana Jones than Captain.
That's a great way of putting it.
There was one time Shatner had to run, and that was because he heard a gunshot in the original series episode, Shorely, and it looked awkward as hell.
Just the way his costumes were like fitted to him, the way his costume was fitted to him, I imagine it was really awkward just to stand there. Looked great, but it was just like, I feel like you don't want to move very much, do you?
Yeah, Shatner always said the worst part of the day was after lunch, when he was on when they were shooting for the original series.
Yeah.
So those things were tight.
They definitely looked tight. Well, to talk about something positive for a minute here, I really liked, for all the Babylon 5 people out there, seeing Captain Sheridan back as basically the president of Earth, like he was in Babylon 5. I thought that was great. If I hadn't heard about it beforehand, I wouldn't have recognized him under all that makeup. Yeah, and I'll say this, like there was one thing I wanted. I rewatched this episode just now. I wish he had more dialogue. I felt that Admiral Halsey was stealing dialogue from him. Like, I want more. Because Bruce Boxleitner is awesome. Like he has the presence. His Captain Sheridan, his President Sheridan was amazing in Babylon 5. And like I feel like he's an underrated actor, and I feel like he just didn't have enough. He just didn't have enough dialogue. Like he was giving toasts, and then he gets punched and he gets stabbed. And I was like, and the same with that senator lady who unfortunately passed away. No, yeah, she got killed in New York. I was like, why is she even in the episode? I mean, like Senator, what was her name? Senator Belask. I'm like, why is she even in the episode? She had a couple of less dialogue. So I mean, I felt like they wasted an opportunity. I can't wait to see him again. I hope he gets more dialogue next time. Have you seen Babylon 5, Alexis?
No, it was recommended to me very adamantly by my British friends, but I haven't seen it yet. No.
I love the first 4 seasons. I'm very conflicted on the 5th one, but yeah, he was the main character in that show back in the day, and my life. He was incredible. I love him in Babylon 5 and in this. So it's just great to see someone like him, who I haven't seen in anything else in decades, to really get back into some sci-fi, have some fun. And I felt like he was having a lot of fun with his character, with all that aesthetics and whatnot.
Yeah, he came in season 2. Season 1, the lead was Michael O'Hare. He played Commander Sinclair. And unfortunately, his actor dealt with mental health issues, and he had to quit because of that. And we found this out after he died. He passed away about 7 years ago. And J. Michael Straczynski basically came out and said why he left the show. So while he was alive, they kept it under wraps. But we found this out. So
I was pissed about it at first, but it worked out in the end. Definitely for the benefit of the show, how it worked out in the end.
Yeah, I actually liked Bruce better.
Yeah, I liked him too.
Yeah, in the end, I definitely. Season 2, I wouldn't agree, but by 3 and 4, yeah, 100% would.
Oh, he was great in season 4. Get the hell out of our galaxy.
Oh, yeah, that was great. Well, we can move on a little bit. I know the scene was a very throwaway one that a lot of people don't probably have a whole lot of feelings on, but I really enjoyed the cowboy episode, really just for more character work with the crew, seeing them, doing a pub crawl. I thought that was funny. Yeah, and
the ages.
I thought that's a brilliant idea and would 100% exist if we had holodecks like that. I could totally see that being the case, but it's just a character building moment, just a few minutes to really, get a little bit more with these characters before the plot happens and there's not enough time anymore. Did anyone have any strong feelings about that scene besides me, and seeing Isaac walking in there saying, there's the space in this place is not big enough for the numerical value of both of us. It was awesome.
Yeah, that was funny. Yeah, I liked it.
Funny.
His mustache.
I'll pretend like I didn't hear that because I want to hear that. I want to hear how he says that.
He says it pretty good.
Oh,
You'll
it's
like
perfect. But it's scenes like this that I feel like are missing in a lot of modern day shows. Is there's random scenes that are meant for strictly character and not necessarily for plot, and those character scenes come up later as being important to why people make certain decisions. Like without that type of stuff in Picard, for example, I don't understand why anyone's making the decisions that they're making. But little stuff like this peppered throughout the show gets me to connect with these characters, to really like them and see what their mentalities are. And this is a very small one in that, but normally we wouldn't be talking about this whatsoever, but it stands out in today's television, at least in my opinion, to the degree that I feel like it bears mentioning more than otherwise would.
Yeah, it gets the viewer invested. These moments are important, which is I don't understand why writers today don't include this. It's like, once again, I think this is these are like corporate products that create this. I mean, with the new Trek and current Star Wars, I mean, franchises that are just bogged down by, corporate, quantity over quality. Whereas shows like the Orville, Stranger Things, Better Call Saul, these all have have artistic visions behind them and passion for what they do.
Yeah,
there are a lot of writers who do this all the time. They're just not American.
Or they're not, or they're not hired in Hollywood.
No, they're literally not American. I watch 90% Asian series now, and the Orville's probably the first one I've jumped in on that was not Asian in quite a while.
My fiance is Vietnamese, so I've been on that binge watching too. Of just watching the subtitles. I'm like looking at their emotions, looking at subtitles.
It'll get faster. It's a muscle. It'll happen. Don't worry.
Pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I relate a lot. But anyways, guys, I gotta head out. I'm trying to find a breakout. I gotta go take care of my dad and make sure he's not watching Ozark.
Well, it's nice to meet you.
My dad's addicted.
Yeah, and do you have a channel or YouTube or Twitter or anything?
Not yet. No, I'm pretty incognito. You'll only see me in the shadows.
Okay.
Ooh.
Yeah, but we got to talk next time. Sorry, let me put my full screen. The Admiral. We got to talk about like Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul one of these days because
I got to see Better Call Saul.
My channel is called Nerdporial Life, the Nerdporial Life form. I've been doing after show. I did after shows for Better Call Saul, so I'll be resuming that. I found a new friend, Jed. I had up to 80 people on that last episode because of what happens.
Dude, it's crazy.
I'm enjoying these after shows. So yeah, if you want, I'm looking for other people that are into Better Call Saul to join.
Yeah,
me and Steve who do these every week or every episode. So.
Okay, we'll connect for sure because that's. Sorry, Jed, I love you, but every time you ask me to go to these streams, I feel like I got to do some damn homework, and because my style is definitely more towards just the dark, the anti-hero. It seems to always come back to the cartel, as far as these shows. But anyways, guys, it was really fun. I'm gonna go enjoy watching this next episode too right now. Jed, thanks for paying for the Hulu account. Love you, bro.
Hey, thanks for being here.
All right, enjoy, everybody. Bye.
Nice to meet you.
Take care, man. Yeah, he was just my roommate back when I was in the military, so he's just kind of always been around. So I keep him around. He's like my pet.
Thank you for your service.
Oh, of course.
I love a civilian, a Nerdporial civilian.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
So, I think that scene I just really liked, and it set up one of my probably my second favorite scene of this episode was the one that came directly after it. And it's very similar to my favorite scene from the last episode. It's such a simple thing, but seeing how excited Ed and Kelly were when they found out that peace was possible with the Krill and to explore Krill. They're like, we get to go to Krill. It still shows that exploration first mentality, and just in a few short lines show what they're thinking.
Ed and Kelly are my favorite part of the show, just period. And I loved that moment too. Yeah.
I don't get why they thought they were drunk or anything like that, and the Admiral said it later. They didn't seem drunk to me, but their just pure excitement was infectious in that moment. It's just like, I'm excited to go to Krill now too.
It is a good day. This is a good day.
Yeah.
It is a good day.
Yeah. It does bring up that discussion we had previously, Jed, where I was like, are they allowed to drink on duty? and we had a kind of little conversation about that because they'd gone off with the wine bottles and stuff. And
I feel like they drink in every episode, or at least that's
yeah,
just
yeah. And then for the Admiral to bring it up, like I was aware you were, you know, that means that they really were not supposed to do that. But then there's a lot of leeway because they get results. So it's like,
yeah,
what do you do?
As long as it works. At least in Star Trek, they had that stupid excuse about the synthahol. You can't get drunk on it. I hate the idea of synthahol because no one's drinking for the taste. No one just like, I'm craving some whiskey.
That's not never true. Some people really like the taste of a good, IPA or whatever. So, I mean,
I don't
it
get
varies.
It.
My friends.
I want the effect.
I'm not a big fan of alcoholic drinks in general. I don't like the feeling. I don't like the taste. I'd rather drink apple juice or Coke.
Apple juice is where it's at. Well, yeah, I just always have to point out scenes like that, especially these days when scenes like that are so rare. I always love character scenes because characters are the things I value most. Like in my book series, I focus on characters so much, and that's just the thing that I value most when consuming stories. As long as the characters are good, the plot can be really bad in my opinion. Like there are a lot of things that I enjoyed that are terrible plot-wise. Like my guilty pleasure for a few years for the first half of the series was Legends of Tomorrow. I know it's dog shit. I know it's awful. Some of the worst TV ever put to film, but I loved those characters and had a lot of fun with it for the first 3 or 4 seasons. And yeah, that's one thing that I think modern shows and movies are so bad at, is that they can come up with any sort of convoluted plot. They can do plot sometimes, but characters, they're just so empty cardboard cutouts that are NPCs just to develop the plot and say what needs to be said to progress what's going on and nothing else. They're just so empty to me that I always have to point out scenes like this that make me feel that these characters are real, that they're actually alive and could exist. And that's one reason I love the Orville so much, is because even in weak episodes, these characters and these actors shine through as real people. So I'm always going to be harping on scenes like this when we talk about these shows. But
I agree. I mean, character development's important for anything. And that's why I got into anime, because anime, especially anime in the 90s and the 2000s, had a lot of good character development. And that's what got me into like why I have such high standards for storytelling now. And then you had good shows like Sopranos, obviously Breaking Bad, and 24, and a whole bunch of other shows. And of course, classic Star Trek, the 90s Star Trek, and Babylon 5, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So that's why I have such high standards when it comes to stuff. And that's why I'm so opinionated and so critical of Disney Star Wars, because they just half-ass everything. Same with New Trek. Well, New Trek's case, they quarter-ass everything because they suck.
So I'm guessing you didn't check out the finale of Kenobi.
Oh, I did. I watched it.
Oh, you did? So
my brother wanted to. My brother got Disney Plus, and I was like, I wasn't going to watch it because of what I already knew about. I'm like, this is going to be stupid. And I watched it, and I was like, I didn't hate the first episode, but I was like kind of meh. I was kind of in the middle. But I just didn't agree with how they portrayed Obi-Wan. I would have thought Obi-Wan would have been a little bit more careful. He probably would have went on another adventure. He would have learned to be more stealthy, like we see in the original Star Wars. And I think he should have stayed on Tatooine. And it should have revolved around Luke, not Leia.
It should have been a character study.
Yeah, it should have been a character study.
Simple.
There were some great moments in the show. Like I loved the Anakin and Obi-Wan thing, despite the fact that Anakin looked like, and I agree with everybody on this, he looked like a 40-year-old teenager.
Well, yeah, and they just were really, really bad with characters in that show from what I've checked out, especially with like Reva. But shows like that and most of Disney are really bad about characters, specifically when it comes to their morality, is that they're very confused on what good morality is these days. And that's something that I always harp on. Like the Umbrella Academy, I really love season 1. Season 3, they had one of the main characters grape someone and no one gave a shit because she was a woman. And then with like Wanda in Doctor Strange, this morality is very corrupt. But the Orville is able to portray bad morality like it is in What's Her Bucket Charlie's case, but still portray it as wrong and condemn her for that, but still understand her. Like finding that balance of like, yes, you're wrong, but we can understand why it is, and you need to move past this. But you're not wrong for starting out this way, and
Yeah,
that's
and
just something that's very impressive.
Yeah, and that's why Star Trek is bipartisan. It's not. It's not.
Absolutely.
Don't listen to the writers, even the writers of Deep Space Nine and TNG. Don't listen to them. They say that the Star Trek was always the word that rhymes with bloke. You know, it wasn't. I mean, the way it was something that reached. It was something that reached a lot of people on both sides of the political aisle, because it didn't just force a particular ideology on you. It made you think. It was something that made you think about the the morality, the philosophy, the psychology. It made you think. It gave you food for thought.
That's at its best.
As says, and he's right.
I would argue though about the Orville. I would argue that it's slanted a bit. Because,
of course, I mean,
because the creator is very,
day.
very vocal. Seth MacFarlane's very, very vocal about what he believes and doesn't believe, and it's apparent the whole time. It's apparent. I'm hyper aware because I just am hyper aware. The second I turn something on, like that's what the things I look for. I'm like, what are you trying to preach at? What are you trying to do? What's your agenda? Because I hate it so much. And it's not, and I'm all about themes. Like, whereas characters, your number one thing, themes are mine. Like, I love characters, obviously, and characters uphold themes, and there wouldn't be themes without them. But that's the first thing I look for is that. And I like plenty of things that I don't agree with all the time. Like, it's fine. But it's just the presentation. And that's where, I mean, I'm sure we're all going to talk about it, what happened in this episode, but because it took such a sharp turn where I thought this episode was really cool. Actually, like, even the political stuff, like one of my favorite parts was when Ed was sitting there talking to Kelly about the political videos and how they were all messed up. And he's like, I can't even tell what's real anymore. And I love, first of all, that he admitted that, because one thing I really love is Ed's character is very like not haughty. He doesn't think he knows everything. He doesn't act like that. Like he can have moments like anyone where he's like really firm about what he thinks or believes. But I like that he's always open to admitting something's wrong or that he did something wrong. And that's he does that. He's like, I can't tell the difference anymore. And I thought that was really profound because that's something any era of history humans can relate to is their media or the perception being distorted by their media or their government. So I thought that's really good. That's really solid. Let's go with that. And I was hoping the episode would be more focused on that. But then it takes this like sharp hook turn, as we know. And it's kind of like, okay, why though? Why did this have to go there? But I, even despite, because I was like avoiding the Orville because of Seth MacFarlane. But then as I'm watching it, I'm like, God dang it, he's charming. Like, he's kind of cute too. Dang it. And I was like, why? This is not right. But it's just, I just think he wrote the character really well to be a very likable, relatable person. Doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. Like, he's just, he's a good person that you kind of want to have discussions with because he doesn't think he knows everything. He doesn't have
he'll hear you out. He acts like a leader. He acts like a captain. Which is something
pride isn't one of his faults.
Which is something I wish Anson Mount's Captain Pike in Stranger Worlds would do, but he doesn't. He just lets everybody backtalk him, and he acts like a friend boss instead of a captain. But like I see Ed, and he's willing to listen to Charlie, but there was a point where he had to put his foot down. So
I would not defend MacFarlane at all, but nor do I like the Family Guy for the most part. But I will say that having seen a lot of clips of Family Guy on YouTube, which I think are hilarious, he attacks both sides politically.
So he was friends with Rush Limbaugh when he was alive.
Yeah.
So I mean, he can have a conversation.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I do respect about him is that like you think, okay, if he is a agenda-driven activist kind of person, that he would really be strong on one side, but in his own shows that he controls and he writes and he does voices for and all that, he attacks his own base a lot. Yeah. So
it's not just politics.
So he is capable as a comedian, which is basically what he is, of being unbiased, at least outwardly in many cases.
Most of the time.
But in this episode though, it is related to the election cycle we have right now, the timing of the episode coming out, and him trying to get the message out there before you hit the ballot box. And it is a little bit obvious what he was trying to do there. So I have some feelings about that.
Yeah, that's kind of how I want to close out the episode, is with the political stuff. But of what Alexa said, I wanted to follow up on is that comment he made about I don't know what the truth is anymore. He was referring to both sides in this election.
Yeah.
He was very much setting it up to be a no-win scenario. It's like, do we want this chancellor to stay in power? He's doing all this heinous stuff. It's like, wait, is he? But he's helping us. Do we want this bad guy to be in charge if he's helping us? And is Talea much worse? Like, if you're attacking both sides, like Mike is talking about, that's what makes the best comedians. Like Dave Chappelle, everyone loves Dave Chappelle. Well, besides Twitter, because he makes fun of everyone. And I think that's a very important tool for a comedian. And this episode had its moments like that where it was doing both, and then it take a sharp left turn and stop doing that. But
I was super into it. I was like, man, this is a really cool episode. I love this world. And like you said, that idea of like, this is a hopeful thing. Like, we're going to go there. And obviously we knew some bad stuff was going to go down, but like just that setup of like, we get to go to Krill and we get to do this and we get to, so I was really all into that. But then, and I was even into the daughter thing, even though it, like I told you, it was kind of like, they did do that in Discovery, like almost the same exact thing. So it was a little bit weird. It was maybe a little too close on the copycat range, but not quite, I guess. But I still loved it just because it was Ed's daughter. If it was anyone else's, I would have been like, boring. But
what did they do in Discovery?
It was just the whole thing with Ash and the Klingon woman. They end up having a baby she has to keep secret, and she's just
that was terrible.
Yeah,
that was
he
awful.
turns into a human. So it's just like, a lot of those same beats were similar, and just like the whole hidden child thing. And like, I was kind of like, they could have tweaked it a bit more to make it more unique, but I still thought that was a really cool idea, and it's going to do a lot for Ed's character. So I'm excited to see where that goes. And I like that Kelly didn't act pitiful and jealous. And I was like, thank you, because I don't want any more drama.
That relationship is closed completely.
They're setting up a cat fight. I want to see a fight between Kelly and Talea.
Well, maybe for different reasons, though. She tried to egg her on, but she was like, "Forget you, lady. I just want my team out of here."
I still want to see it.
Yeah, no, it'll be good. But anyway, that was kind of just thoughts I had about that whole journey. But there was so much to love about this episode until
this episode was a game changer. Like, I couldn't believe what was going on. I did not see this coming. Now they're fighting a war on two fronts. How is this going to resolve?
It can make things very difficult.
You have the Kalon, and then now you have the Krill. So they're fighting. My question, this is something I thought of. I don't know if you guys would agree with me. I think the Kalon are behind this. I think the Kalon are behind Talea. Because I was asking myself, watching this, like, who is the power behind Talea? Who?
God.
Because if you want to,
if you're right, they're going to make a Russia voter fraud deal. No.
But remember, this is fiction.
Wouldn't put it past them, though. At this rate, the way our country acts, I wouldn't put it past them to be super heavy-handed in everything. Everything.
Yeah.
Well, they had a lot of opportunities.
I mean, they did this in Deep Space Nine with the Dominion. The Dominion manipulated a lot of species throughout Deep Space Nine to do something like this. So I think the Kalon are going to try and do something similar. I mean, they learned from their defeat and identity, and they're gonna start doing. I think they're gonna start doing more Dominion-like things. They're gonna start acting from behind the scenes. I think
it would be a smart way, because that's how they initially started out, with sending Isaac to learn their weaknesses. Now that they failed the first time, they might go back to that type of approach. Like,
they might have the ability.
Manipulate.
I think they might have the ability to shift, or not necessarily shapeshift, but to disguise themselves as humans.
We're going down a replicator route from Stargate.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Maybe Charlie's a Kalon, and they're making her hate so much just to have no one question her if she's a Kalon or not. It's like, no, she can't be a Kalon. She hates them so much.
I got to rip that poster off my wall if she's a Kalon. God dang it.
Well, maybe they'll misdirect her, because there seems to be a lot of misdirect with her character. So maybe it'll just be like a a faux thing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm so fascinated to see where her character goes because,
Me
yeah, as
too.
the newcomer, she's done a great job of fitting in. Like, this has been 2 seasons, and I think she got into the crew way faster than the new security officer. I can never remember her name,
Tala?
but
Tala.
yeah, Atala. It took about half the season for me to start to like her because I love the first security officer. I'm like, no, I want the first one back. But
So
Charlie
speaking
was
of her,
within the first
did,
episode.
did you see she's going to be a supposed new replacement for Spiky Girl from the previous, which episode was it? 2 or 3?
Episode 1.
Episode 1 was Spiky Girl?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because he was in bed with her when he came up with how to save Isaac.
Yeah,
Oh,
they
right.
yeah, so Lamar and her were talking,
Yep.
and so we find out that she gets promoted, and they kind of brush that over to the side. They just have that single
Start
scene,
flirting.
and that was it.
Mhm.
So
did
they
flirt
said
a
there's gonna
little
be a
bit,
love
so.
story. That could be the next love story.
I could see it. They'd be fun together. I mean, what's his bucket? Lamar likes some kinky stuff, so I mean, a woman powerful enough to break him in half, he might enjoy that if he liked spiky girls. So
Yeah, S&M. Come on. Even
I know
that
I
was
like
still
Spiky
exists in
Girl. I
25th
want to see
century.
more of her, but probably the makeup is probably
it's
taking
probably
too much
very
time.
difficult.
Spiky Girl
Yeah.
had
Yeah.
more character development than any other character in New Trek. I'll say that. I thought she was more interesting than anybody else because we learned about her. We did this thing. They did this thing
Mhm.
called we learned about her people, like especially how they view suicide. They view suicide as something that's not to be tabooed.
Right.
I like and what's funny was Lamar's like that's the most effed up thing I've ever heard, but then he took that back because he realized he was talking to someone from a different culture who has
you have to
different
respect.
different perspectives, different thoughts on the matter,
Mhm.
diversity of thought and opinion.
Yeah.
Who would have
Yeah,
thought?
exactly. And that's a great point for like how classic Star Trek has always been, and a thing that's very relevant these days is you can 100% respect someone's way of life and respect their opinions and all that, but you don't have to agree with them. Like you
No.
can be like, "Hey, you live your life. I have no problems with you doing that. I personally think it's wrong what you're doing, but you do you." And that's something that Star Trek has always been in the Orville. It's like you have to respect other cultures. That is not something that exists anymore. You have to agree with everyone or you're evil, but you can't agree with everyone. So everyone's just a bad guy these days. And it's impossible to balance all of that from the alphabet community to other religions. There's always someone who's going to disagree or be in conflict. So there's a no-win scenario. But
You
I think
remember
the
Riker
perfect
fell
win
in love with
scenario-
that non-binary alien person. That was a big deal. That had to go
Outcast.
through a sex change because she was starting to become feminine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and they tackled it a lot in what was the show? DS9 with the Drax being transgender basically and having a wife from her previous host.
Dax.
And
Dax.
Oh, Dax. Yeah.
Dax, sorry. Dax, my
Drax.
bad. But it's been a while. But like they did stuff like this in the 90s and they did it so well without making any sort of firm statements. It's like this is how they
And
live.
not damn one of us cared, right? We all
No.
thought she was amazing.
Yep. Oh, I
Heck,
love
they did something like
Dax.
that in Enterprise too. With you had the couple,
Mhm.
you had the mother, and you had the husband, the wife, and then you had a binary third. There was like a third sex, and they were the third sex. They were treated like they were treated like second class citizens.
Right.
And so the engineer Trip tries to get her to to protest and all that, and to stand up for for their rights, and she ended up just committing, or I say she, it just ended up committing suicide.
Yeah, it's
And
too
it was
difficult.
it was one of those episodes that led to the formation of what would become the Prime Directive
Mhm.
for that same
Yeah.
Well,
reason,
and
because things
it's got a lot of
didn't turn out the way they
similarities to.
went.
It's got a lot of similarities to Bortus when his child was born. Was
Yeah,
born
exactly.
female. I don't think you
Right.
saw that episode, Alexis. Have you?
No.
About a girl.
So
Oh, that's
yeah.
a
So Bortus
I
That
mean,
is
I
was
know
the
they
first
had
great
a,
episode of
they
the
had
show.
a child.
Yeah.
but-
Yeah, so
Yeah.
they're from the same sex species, and 99% of the time, children are born male, but his child was born female, and so it was this whole argument: is in their society, you have to forcibly transition the child to male if it's born female, And then like the crew of the Orville's like, that's wrong. We can't force a child to do this. And so it's a whole conflict of, hey, to what extent can we respect someone's culture? And it's just very well done. Like that seems like some very difficult subject matter, especially today.
Oh,
but
definitely.
It's very well
And
done.
you know how Bortus's mind got changed? Because he watched Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. That's why. Yeah.
Well, that makes sense, but I guess my fear is that will get lost in this show if it keeps tilting towards this dangerous line,
Well, it got heavily criticized at the time. I really hope
it doesn't, but it could, because the pressure of our society now is quite different than other Trek eras of these kind of ethical dilemma shows. So it's kind of why I'm like, I guess that's also why I'm like extra on edge when I started watching this, because I'm like I am armed and ready, and my sword's over here, my pen's over here, and I am judging the crap out of this show. But it's just because that's what I've come to expect recently. So it's just I can't really help it. But I've been pleasantly surprised for the most part, just not completely 100% happy.
Well, I do admit that I'm guilty of this, but it is a bit of a feast and famine. Like it's the best that we have to offer. So we do have a bit of a lens over it where we're like, hey, this is better than what we've got. It is left leaning, definitely, like you're talking about, but it's less so than we're accustomed to. So it seems much better than it is. Like I'll fully admit that, but I do think like Electric Sheep would be good in any series at any time. But there's definitely a bit of a feast and famine when it comes to this show for me.
It's not just politics, though. It's religious belief too, because that's where Seth MacFarlane's also very, very outspoken about being anti that. And there was a moment in that episode, what was it called? The very last one of season 1, where Kelly becomes God, basically.
Mad idolatry.
Yeah, that one. There was that scene at the end, when they're all around the table explaining how Isaac helped their culture and all that. And they're just like, basically like, well, just stick to reason and logic and everything will be great. And it's kind of like, well, but kind of the whole heart of science and discovery and all this is the mystery. Like there are going to always be things we'll never be able to explain. And that should be the core of these kind of shows. Like there is mystery, like there is things that are mystical that we won't be able to put into a box, and being okay with that, even though you're very science, logic, hardline reason, which isn't wrong or anything, but it's just more like admitting that isn't all there is, and admitting that just saying stuff like, oh, just follow this and you'll be fine and you'll evolve. It's like, but also like aiming for mystery, aiming for the unknown is what evolves you too. So I kind of was like a little bit bothered by that, but I know it's coming from the headspace of the writer, and I just left it at that. But it wasn't as bad as what happened in this last episode. So anyway, but yeah, that's just something I've noticed too. It's not just politics, it's philosophy as well. And as long as they stay in the middle, it's going to be great. It's just worrisome, there's definitely some worry that it might not do that.
Well, and for the first 3/4 of the episode, half of the episode, I thought they were staying in the middle. I was very impressed. But the part that I wanted to talk about next is the character of Talea. So this is her 3rd episode, basically. I think it's only her 3rd. But like after the last one, 4th? Is it her 4th? After her last one, or the one where she got shipwrecked with Ed and she has to come to terms with really connecting with him, and he saves her life, spares her life. She could have easily gone in 2 ways. She could have been like the ambassador for humanity to the Krill and tried to change it from the inside, or go in the opposite direction. And that's something that we've seen in the past. Sometimes seeing your enemy for who they truly are can only add to your xenophobia. That's something we've seen in history. So I thought it was a very bold and interesting choice that was beneficial to the plot, at least, to have her as the villain, because she had that personal connection and she knows more about the Union than anybody else, and she's also the one who hates the Union more than anyone else. So that type of approach I thought was a very interesting one that wasn't something I would have expected after the last 3 episodes of her character. Anyone think any differently of her character or have any thoughts on Talea?
I was surprised, to be honest. I didn't think they would do this with her character. I thought she would still be like, on the fence. Because you would think, I thought Mercer got through to her, in the you know
Mhm.
in the episode where they talk about the king and I, and nothing left accepting but fishes, or I forget what it's called. But I thought,
Mhm.
you would think they reached a common ground. I mean, he saved her life several times. Obviously, he cares about her. They 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 had sex. Obviously, they have a kid now as a result.
Mhm.
But that didn't really. She still likes him, or I think she still loves him in a way, but
Mhm.
she still for some reason she still hates the Union for what Ed and Gordon were ordered to do.
Right.
But they were simply only ordered to infiltrate the Krill in that episode in
Have you
season one. But then we find out the Krill
seen
were
that
going
one, Alexis?
No,
It's
I
episode 6
kind
of
of
season
skimmed
1.
through stuff. Yeah, so I'll be caught up soon. But yeah.
It's all
yeah,
good.
so they were going to destroy a Union colony, this Krill ship. And Talea was the teacher. She was teaching a bunch of children on board. She was just a happy-go-lucky teacher, who was actually one of the few that were friendly to Gordon and Ed when they were disguised as Krill. And because of the fact that she was super friendly, then plus there were kids there, and Ed thought the kids, obviously, children are innocent.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
So he said, we're going to be doing this. Turn off your lights and stuff, and that's when they basically killed everyone on board with light.
Yeah.
And because they had to, it was either that or they'd murder a colony full of men, women, and children, families and all. It would have been just like Cestus 3 in the TOS episode Arena. It would have been horrible. So they had to do what they had to do, and because of this, Talea's like literally at the end of the episode, the last thing she says to him is like, you're gonna pay for what you did. She says this to Ed. So and so she comes back in Geloja as disguised as a human, very hot by the way, and so Gordon throughout the whole episode, Gordon's trying to hit on her because she's sitting right next to him on the bridge, and she's not giving him the time of day, but she starts getting close to Ed. And then in the episode with King and I, we find out that she's actually Talea. So technically, Jed, you were right. It was her Talea's third appearance.
I forgot about the first one as a human.
But she was a human in Geloja. We didn't know it was Talea. That was the twist. So
yeah.
But yeah, I thought there was gonna be a path towards some sort of redemption. I think there still is a path. The way they ended this episode with her watching her child, because the episode ended with them questioning whether she really cared about the child or not over her leadership. And we see at the very end that she still really cares about her child, that she's just watching her and that doesn't take her eyes off the screen once. So
and she only cares because it's Ed's child and she's in love with him, like clearly.
Yeah.
So it's love by extension, if nothing else.
There was one particular scene, I rewatched this. There was one particular scene that kind of interrupted the flow. And it was the scene where they explain their Krill's path on a certain thing that's being talked about.
Oh, we'll get to that.
Yeah, that is that's the turn. That's the hard turn.
Yeah. That's how I want to close out, because I know that one's gonna get crazy.
Because they could have done was they could just had her say, your people do that stuff all the time, and then they could just ended the scene. But they had to go and elaborate on that further, and I felt that kind of detracted. It was an interesting idea. I'll say this: that was a very interesting idea of what they did, but it wasn't necessary.
Yeah,
it wasn't necessary.
Mike, did you have any thoughts on Talea's character, how she went compared to her previous episodes, or anything about why she made her decisions?
Sure. I felt that she was being, at least internally, in conflict with her own beliefs, and she had to overcompensate. That's how I kind of felt about it. Like, she was being challenged internally. She was challenging herself. Her worldview was kind of shaken a little bit by her interaction with the Union, her love for Ed, or whatever we want to call that. And as we know from current year, a lot of times when you're conflicted about something like that, you're challenged, you're confronted, you pull back, you reinforce, you throw the walls up. And I think she just I'm going to say overcompensating again. That's what I kind of got from her. Crickets.
Perfect.
Where's my crickets?
Well, there's two more scenes that I wanted to talk about before we get into the political discussion of this episode that it's going to take quite a bit of time, I feel like, and it's the most controversial of it. And Alexis brought it up earlier. It was my favorite scene of the episode was the father-daughter interaction. I just loved how happy Ed was to meet her, and how connected he was with her so quickly, and how the Krill woman's like, "Are you ashamed of her?" Just that whole scene, that whole interaction, I thought was very good for his character, setting him up for the future. And like you were saying, Alexis, this may be the beginning of a new arc for his character. Will he fight to get back to Krill during the war to protect her? I thought that's how the episode was going to end, is that when they got rescued, he's like, "Lamar, get over to this side of town. We have to take her away now," or something like that. But that interaction between the two of them, the way he smiled, I just really felt his love for her just so quickly. And it's that kind of thing that you hear about, kind of cliche in movies, but you hear about it in real life too, is that when you find out you're a parent, it's almost a innate biological reaction. Like it's
100%.
instantaneous, at a child's birth, you always hear about, "My life changed the moment I held my child for the very first
100%
time."
true.
I felt that
100%
this
true.
was that scene.
Yeah. It was echoed really nicely in their balcony scene too between him and Kelly. I love that. And I was really like for me personally, definitely like heart and dagger, just that part where she was like, "I'm sad we never got that far," which I'm hoping is foreshadowing, but we'll just, that's just my romantic notion. But I love that. He was talking about missing her. Yeah. That longing now that he's had that moment as a dad, and immediately accepted it, which is 100% on cue for Ed. But I really love their moment talking about it because, well, she didn't act pathetic and jealous, which was awesome. But also just like that kind of sadness for like, wouldn't it have been cool if we had had that together? Like they still could, but it's just that moment really kind of solidified it, bookended those scenes together, or however you want to say it. I really like that a lot.
No, it was a very good through line that really connects to their relationship, which you've probably missed quite a bit of over the arc. But they're very well done with each other for after a few episodes in between. But yeah, their relationship is so strong despite the door being closed on them. And yeah, that was just a great interaction between the two of them that really helped Kelly's character as much as it did Ed's. So yeah, that was very impressive.
Yeah, I just love how open-ended the episode was, and I hope it continues later this season.
Well, it's setting up quite a bit for just Ed's character with the daughter, and then the war with the Krill, which seems to be like the season finale will probably be a final confrontation with the Krill or the Kalons, something like that, or with the Krill maybe. And just there's a lot that this episode changed. Like you were saying, it was game changing for the foundation of the show ever since Identity. It uprooted everything that we thought was coming.
Yeah, next week's episode is going to bring the Mocklins. We're going to see the Mocklins again for the first time. So.
It's been a while.
I think there's tensions with them too. I mean, my prediction was that the Mocklins were going to leave the Union.
Well, yeah,
and now they're going to because of this whole thing with the Krill, they're going to be trying to appeal to the Mocklins every which way they can, because the Mocklins are the reason why that they have these weapons that they have the weapons that they do.
They lose the Mocklins and the Krill, there's no way they stand a chance against the Kalons. So
yeah, if something like that happens with the Mocklins, I'm just gonna be like, what's gonna happen?
It might be like an Isaac self-sacrifice. Maybe he has to patch into the mainframe and he changes them all or something like that. There's a lot of cool ways that they could go about it. And they have more possibilities now than ever, because before it was just like, oh, they're all going to team up and then crush the Kalons and then it'll be over. But by kind of taking away their support, they're making so many different options for themselves that we can't predict what comes next. There's just more opportunities than ever before now. So
what I would like to have seen is I would like to have seen some scavenging taking place in the wreckage from that battle from the last season, where some of the technology from like the Kalons or whatever was incorporated into Union vessels and beefed them up quite a bit more than they were. I think that's kind of that would be the first priority, wouldn't it be? Like you have a wreckage of a Kalon ship. It's like figure out how their energy systems work, their weapon systems work.
Yeah, they did that with They did that with the Dominion. There was an episode where they tried to claim a ship, and they were being bombarded, and they had to hide in the ship.
Mm.
And yeah, I agree, because the Dominion were kicking their butts. Like
Yeah.
they're I forget what their purple phasers were just like they're cutting them like butter. Even with
And wouldn't Isaac also know all these things? Wouldn't he be able to, for example, clue the not UN, but the Union in on?
I think that's why they keep him around in the first place. Because if not, then they would have been adamant about him being deactivated,
staying off. Yeah.
Right, but I mean, not just like upgrade the shield strength by 3% or whatever. I mean, teach us how to make all of this stuff. Like, we need to know. Download all your knowledge into this computer so that we can use the information. Like, it needs to be more, I don't know, more proactive. Because in my opinion, these machines, because they are machines, they can build things so much faster than everybody else, right? So they could recover their losses within a very short amount of time.
Yeah.
Whereas the Union can't.
No.
They have to sleep, they have to eat, they have to do all these things. So
that was one of the reasons why the Dominion was so so tough to beat in Deep Space Nine, because all their soldiers were breeded. The Vorta were breeded, the Jem'Hadar were all breeded, and they were able to build ships at like an incredible rate because of that. So.
Yeah. Well, it would have been interesting. Was it this episode that started out with the Orville being in a docking on Earth? Was that where it was? I think it would have been interesting if they started out like, hey, the Kalon upgrades are in, just say something like that in passing, and then they use that Kalon upgrade in the battle with the Krill. And then when the crew realized that they're not so superior to the Union, that might have reopened the discourse, because what's the bucket? Teleia said, our military is more powerful than ever. We don't need you. And then if the Orville could just like slice through them, like you're talking about with the Kalon weapon, that might have been like, oh, we need to reevaluate our position as the Krill.
It was still a pretty
interesting through line.
It was still pretty neat that they were able to basically go to the home world and rescue everybody and then leave. Now, I don't know how many Union ships were lost in that battle. I didn't really count it. But you have to assume that some of them were, which is another topic we could talk about, is, you have a small crew, a small contingency on the planet. Sure, they're important people, but do you lose entire ships full of people to rescue them? Or do you do it diplomatically?
Well, it's the age-old military debate of like no man left behind. Like, it's in every war movie ever. I mean, that's the premise of Saving Private Ryan. Do we risk all these people for one person or the landing party? Well, they didn't give
diplomacy a chance, though, right? They just immediately said that's what we're doing. So it wasn't even, okay, let's maybe set up a blockade, maybe restrict their movements to a certain space. There was nothing. It was just...
I think that's what would have happened if it weren't the president.
SEAL Team 6.
I think the president... Yeah. If it weren't the president, I think they would have done what you're talking about. It's like, hey, we still need to try peace. But since they kidnapped the president, they don't have a choice. They have to go in there.
That was an act of war.
Yeah.
True.
And that's the next part I wanted to talk about, was the shuttle rescue and then the space battle. That CGI was
Can I touch on something really quick about Kevin here? I think that he's going to have a lot of nagging, I don't know, maybe even nightmares or dreams about his daughter being left behind. That's gonna really weigh on him quite a bit. We're gonna see, I think, a lot of that, daydreaming about it, looking out the window, wondering what she's up to, all that. I think it's gonna come in, because you meet somebody like that and you realize that the mom really isn't in the picture. She's being raised by random, I don't know what you would call them, even like just maids or babysitters or whatever. I don't know. I think that, see, part of me wants to have just abducted her and taken her. But then on the other hand, that would have been even worse. I think that would have been worse, especially for her, because then she's not in the environment that she's been growing up. If she was a lot younger, sure. But at the age that she is, she wouldn't understand, like, why are you stealing me away? Why are you? Because she seems happy playing with her, I don't know, whatever it is that she's playing with. But yeah, so that, I think there's going to be a lot of conflict with Mercer going forward. Did I do the right thing? What's she up to? Is she safe? Are they going to try to kill her to get her, make sure that nobody ever finds out about her? Yeah, I think at least we're going to have a Mercer episode where he's on the planet disguised as whatever they are, the Krill, doing the thing where like Spock was pretending to be Romulan. He's going to be there. and he's going to try to figure out how to get her away, or there's going to be something happening there. And I think we'll see that happen in the season still to come.
No, that would definitely be an interesting way to go about in a future episode. Maybe a solo mission where he's taking up most of the screen time. I think that would be really cool. One-man mission, go rogue or something like that. Be a very interesting way about it.
That little girl, Anaya, you know, the basically her name's the title episode, Rain Gently Falls, I believe. She was just so adorable. I wanted to hug her. Those big blue eyes. I was just like, I wanted to hug her. And the idea that she's the daughter of two worlds just made me think of, if you remember Deep Space Nine, there was a character named Tora Ziyal. She was the daughter of Gul Dukat and a Bajoran woman that was enslaved on Terok Nor, what becomes Deep Space Nine. And the thing was, I mean, Ziyal was, I think, a teenager or an adult. So she was older, but her story ends very tragically. Like, she gets killed, and that's what leads Dukat to go insane. And then he makes a deal with demons, and then he becomes a demon. And then him and Sisko have a fight.
Character.
And, so it was so heartbreaking. And with this character being much younger, I hope that we don't see a dark turn.
You can't handle that again?
No. I want to hug her. I just want to hug that sweet.
I got a question to ask both of you. A second here.
Yeah.
So in either the Next Generation or the movies, they established that essentially all of the races that we know about in Star Trek are all in some way have the same origin, that you can intermix with any of them. There's half whatever.
Yeah.
This has not been established in the Orville, and you have the Krill, which are obviously some reptilian species, completely different than how did that work? Is it just in the script? Is it just Orville?
Humanoids with humanoids? That's kind of a sci-fi trope just in general.
Yeah, but I mean, at least they have some backstory of why it works within the Star Trek universe. But in Orville, it's obviously not even humanoid. It's like, I mean, humanoid, sure, but I mean, it's like reptilian versus mammalian. It's not the same. So how, you know what I mean? Is it they didn't care? Is it they're just poking fun at the whole thing? What do you guys think is going on?
I think it's statistically likely that at least some of the species we'd be able to interbreed with, especially a humanoid. A humanoid state is a very unique DNA. There has to be at least a similarity enough in our DNA if we come out looking so similar. There's got to be a through line that.
But that's why I highlight the Krill. That's why I'm highlighting the Krill, though, which are very different.
Yeah,
that's my point.
I think they just really didn't think about it. Is they wanted the story and they just accepted that they could do it. And I don't necessarily have a problem with it. Like
I do, only because I gotta know why things work. I have to understand it.
It's a Star Trek trope at this point.
Yeah.
Humanoids.
Well, and if it was like a crazy species, like if Yaphet had a kid with Claire, I'd be like, all right, what the hell is going on there?
Yeah.
Like,
Yaphet species, like, they don't do this typical. Even though he wants to date Claire, but they do mitosis. They just split.
Right.
So, and that's what I think is going to happen to Yaphet because of unfortunately the passing of Norm Macdonald. I think two more comedians should be his children, and I think one of them should be David Spade and maybe Rob Schneider.
Rob Schneider would be awesome.
Oh yeah, that would be great. Yeah, the Yaphet situation is going to be hard to deal with no matter what they do, and that might be a season 4 deal because if they ever get that far. But I think we're at the point where we're getting pretty late in the show, so we can finally talk about, the big elephant in the room with this episode. And I do want to say up front that I did feel like I have to give Seth MacFarlane props for the degree of restraint that he had politically. Like, I think he could have gone way more ham-fisted. Like, he could have made so much of a point about January 6th, about the election, 2016, 2020, both elections, current election fraud. There were just so many things that he could hammer over the head so hard, but it's just like,
I thought you were talking about a different elephant. But go on.
What? Oh, we're going to get to that one.
Okay.
I think I know what you're talking about. But like when it comes to all that, I felt like he was restraining himself, and I have to respect him for that because it all helped the episode. But then the one scene happened that we're all referring to, and that one was the one that immediately took me out of the episode, destroyed pacing, and just felt random and wasn't necessary, especially because they end up back in the same room in the next scene. It's like, we're in a room, oh, let's go all the way across town, see this happen, come back, continue our conversation. It's just like they put pause on their conversation and came back. Felt it was just really unnecessary and didn't benefit their relationship or their discussion with the daughter whatsoever to have this aside. Like, you could just say, I couldn't do it, or just say something like, the Krill aren't like that. We don't think that's not an option for us, and leave it at that. But they had to have that scene, which I think someone just thought, oh, this is a cool concept. Like, shove it in there where we can, because like you were talking about, it is a cool concept of sci-fi wise. Like, if you had the technology for good holograms, how would you utilize that in a society like this? So like, I think the concept is cool. It was just jammed in there in a place where it was completely unnecessary and didn't fit the scene. Like, that's a concept that needs its whole episode, just like the About a Girl episode. That concept was the entire scene. But did anyone else have any thoughts about, you know, the scene we're talking about, or the political stuff in general, how that was handled?
Yeah.
All right, Alexa, I know you've been wanting to talk about this.
No, well, I think what also made this what made me go, what, was that Ed said this beautiful quote where he was like, with every child, a new world is born. And I was like, damn, that's good. I love that. And then 2 seconds later, they're like, but don't forget about abortion and stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, are you effing kidding me? And then, of course, what happened today in the world? And I'm just like, this is all a joke. This is all a joke.
Bad
like,
timing.
it's just ridiculous.
Or no, it was good timing. He did it. I think it's deliberate.
Oh, it was totally deliberate. It was totally.
I mean,
deliberate.
it was made a long time ago.
But
I mean, like the episode was made 2 years ago. They had it done like in the middle of COVID.
Yeah, but I think like people know there's been story beats about this whole thing for a while. So it's not, I mean, like the precise timing, maybe not,
it's
but as
extra
far as
relevant.
Like, the relevance and all that.
Extra relevant this week. It's extra relevant this week.
I just don't, and then he asked the question, like, then why did you have her? Which I think is a good relevant question to ask. And like, I didn't think that was wrong at all or anything like that, because like, then shut up. Why did you have her then, if that's the problem? But then, she goes into she could have just said something simple like, that's not an option for us. That's not what we do here. You know, left it at that. But then they had to go into this like hyper cruel, ridiculous scenario that even for that world seemed absolutely ridiculous to me. I'm like, who does? They're brought to a room like this one, and then this happens, and it's like they just happen to stroll in right when this is going to go on, and I'm like. How many times a day? But it was just but that was commentary after that quote, that beautiful quote, and that whole point Ed was trying to make. It just got ruined in seconds.
As political commentary, it was done so poorly just because that quote, like if that quote weren't in here, it would be semi-effective political commentary. But the fact that he was conflicting his own statement makes it very poor political commentary.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So. I'm like, are you confused? Like, what is going on here? So anyway, that's just my rant about it. It was like, you know, I'm not going to get into the whole debate because the thing is, it's a very, very gray all over the place debate that is a huge mess. So the fact that people think they can
relevant for entertainment
like this is ridiculous anyway. But as far as what I felt established with the previous scene with the two of them, the idea that I think she does want to love and have her daughter, but she's afraid, and also she doesn't want to lose her power. I think that is a really good way, especially for a female character like that, to give her something to struggle with. But it was also pretty clear, like she wanted to protect her as well. So it's like there's all these like this build up, and then he says that beautiful line, and it's just like, and then seconds later, it's like, and you just had to ruin it. Like we were having a great time. But anyway, that's all. That was the main thing for me.
Yeah. Well, I agree that, like, we shouldn't talk about our personal stuff on this because this is entertainment. We shouldn't have to have this conversation that we're having right now. I feel like the majority of entertainment should be apolitical. And that's the whole thing with my channel. That's my point of me being here on YouTube, is to call for apolitical stuff. And that's the biggest thing. And like the Top Gun situation, there was a whole bunch of stuff that's saying, in this article I read about The Guardian, saying wanting apolitical stories is a dog whistle for the alt-right. And that's just how they've boiled it down these days that a scene like this we have to talk about, and it sucks that we have to have this conversation, and we really shouldn't for a sci-fi show that's about escapism and making us think about philosophy. This isn't philosophy, this is politics, and that's not something that sci-fi shows should really dip into all that much, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, there could have been a better way of saying that, but they just a more in tone way of saying that, but it was very yeah.
And that whole, like, it could have just ended with that scene where it could have ended with, you know, her just saying, well, your people aren't any better, and they could have just ended it like that. That whole scene where they go in, she shows them like what they do to people that end fetuses or something. I thought it was a really messed up thing. I thought it was actually pretty hilarious, and pretty creative, but it was unnecessary. The scene was unnecessary.
Yeah. He was making political commentary. It sucks that this is what he thinks his so-called opposition believes should happen. Like, is he thinking that's what they're calling for right now?
Because this episode wasn't about ending fetuses. This episode was about...
It wasn't the point.
Yeah, exactly. It was
about more of the election stuff, which they did actually do right.
Well, the whole thing
about
the dangers
of populism.
Yeah.
The part about bringing the families in and making the child reminiscent of what could have been, that was, I think there's certain states that if you're planning on having an abortion, you're required to see the sonogram and listen to the heartbeat, and it's supposed to make you change your mind before you can actually go forward. And I guess it does. It gets people really wound up, and it's a lot of controversy, and so I think it's an attack on that.
I didn't think it was a
policy.
requirement anywhere, but I know a lot of pregnancy centers that will do that, but it's never, to my knowledge.
I think there were certain states or certain areas. I know that there was a lot of.
Would any of it be post? Would any of it be post? Like, you record a sonogram, wait till the event happens, and it's like, here's the sonogram. This is what could have been. Like, I don't think anyone does it post.
Well, that's true. It wouldn't be after the fact. It would never be after.
Because that's just torture. That's not trying to do anything.
Right.
That's just torture at that point.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Yeah, but my point was that I think it was an attack on that policy or something.
Oh, no, it totally was. You're right.
You're making people feel guilty for making that decision.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just was like, show you went to like a 20 and we need you like a 5. It was just really like it was really too much, because I knew you were right, Mike. It was exactly what they were attacking, because I've known about that a lot. You know, I've known people who've done that and have had their mind changed before.
I was just watching a video today where they were stopping random people on the street. I can't say who it was because I don't know. But it was one of the political YouTubers.
Yeah.
And they would stop people on the street and they would ask, you know, what do you think about all this? And they would say, oh, I'm pro-choice, of course. Even up to the moment before you're going to deliver. Oh, yeah, of course, 100%. And then they would make them watch a video. Not make them, like they're not twisting their arm, but invite them to watch a video on the actual procedure the doctor does at that stage and what happens. And 100% of the people, at least the ones that they released to us to see, who knows, the other 500 people that didn't change their minds, you don't know. Mm-hmm. But the people that we got to see were like, oh, that's horrible. I'll never do that. Never mind. I changed my mind. Forget it. And so it's more of that stuff. It's like if you educate people, then they change their minds.
Yeah. It's most
but you never know, because I don't trust them to be honest. Because it's like Jay Leno going out and, asking random people walking by, like, how many planets in the solar system or what, whatever. And you get all these people that say the wrong thing, and you wonder, okay, how many people said the right thing? Yeah, how many people said the right thing they don't show you?
It's we always like to look at the negative. That's why the best part of American Idol is the people who suck. Like, it's just that's the truth. That's what we want as a society. We want the most negative thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and that's sad, but it's true.
Yeah, it's all manipulated. So I mean, they could put together whatever they want to put together.
Exactly. I just wanted to disclose that because
No, I agree. I mean, that is a good point about the whole thing.
I mean, I make videos.
Yeah,
I edit. I could do whatever I want.
Mm-hmm.
Who's going to stop me?
Exactly.
Beside YouTube.
The manipulation of how you present information. And, media is very good at that. And then these YouTubers that you're talking about, if you're on this platform or any really platform, you can become very good at that, and that can become an issue. Just like how Ed was talking about the informational wars that the different candidates were going through, the schmear campaigns of who's telling the truth in these scenarios.
Did you say
I think
schmear?
that's a
Did
completely
you say schmear?
Schmear?
Now I want a bagel now. Now I want a bagel now.
A bagel.
It's my accent.
Bagel.
A bagel. The good community reference there, man.
Schmear.
Appreciate that. Well, just overall, just like Alexis was saying, it was very unnecessary and definitely dialed up way further than it needed to be. But the rest of the political stuff I thought was done in a way that made sense, that benefited the story, that created conversations and was good character-wise. Like, it made sense character-wise, but this was just a sharp left turn into something completely irrelevant.
Yeah, great
from everything else.
A great YouTuber, Loki's Mornings of Mischief. He basically called this episode a perfect water cooler episode that brings about a lot of discussion and debate.
I would walk past that water cooler really fast. I would not want to stop and have a chat about this.
Yeah.
What are you guys talking about? Oh, last episode of Orville. Okay, guys, I gotta go. See ya. Head to the break room. Bye.
I mean, that in itself is just a reflection of how polarizing everything is, and how you feel that way. Because I have said jack all today about anything. I'm not even going on social media except to share our stream, and because I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to be in the middle of this of this whole thing, and so it's kind of sad that this show also is making people feel that way. Like, you know, we could have had a really good conversation about this had it been presented in a different way and in a more debatable way, but it's more just nope, this is a thing, and then that's it. Okay.
Alexis, do you think people got turned off of this show after that episode? You think it lost some viewers?
Some people probably would, but I think it's more I still want to see where it goes because of the previous scenes, because of that line he said, because of what happened after on the balcony. I think there's still more hope for a positive outcome with this. It's just a shame they had to throw that in there. It really didn't need to happen.
Yeah, I was concerned too. I was concerned going in, doing the after show. I was concerned how people were going to feel about this. Luckily, most people were fine with the episode. I mean, there were a few people that had some issues, but it was received much better than anything New Trek or anything else has been portrayed. So,
because they did a great job, I think, of doing the pro-choice aspect of it, but then also showing Ed immediately fall in love with his daughter and can't imagine his life without her. And so you do get kind of both things if you pay attention.
Yeah.
And that line that Alexis was talking about, every child born is a miracle or whatever, from the Ancana,
a world,
a new world or something.
Every child born, or with every child, a new world is born.
Yeah,
which I think is epic.
Beautiful.
I love it. Yeah, and I think that it is true because she is a child of two worlds, so a whole new world is born. Because as far as we know, and as far as everyone else was acting, this has never happened before. She's a first, and I think that's really cool. And there's a lot you can do with that. And I think if they had shown the struggle of maybe wanting to get rid of her to be more from, is it Talea's side? Yeah,
the mom.
I think they could have had a really good philosophical banter about this topic that would have been more poignant and less accusatory and less extreme. You know, it could have been something more this is what a woman would struggle with in her situation or something.
Yeah.
But
you need to put the work in.
Yeah. But to me, it seems at least that part, as jarring and as stupid and bad as it was, it's still not outweighed by all the other positive things about that storyline that are still there, that hopeful things about the child storyline. So let's just hope that this is the end of that, and that they'll just keep moving forward with this positive story surrounding the daughter.
Yeah, the pendulum needs to swing back a little bit.
Yeah,
absolutely. All right, well, we just crossed the 2-hour mark, so I think this is a good point to start wrapping up. Let's end with some of our just kind of final thoughts on both episodes and plug your individual stuff while you do it. So just real fast, I thought episode 3 is the weakest of Orville for a long time, especially character-wise, and this fourth one is definitely the most divisive. But overall, I still very much enjoyed both of them and have a lot of conflicting thoughts. But overall, what are your final thoughts, Alexis? Where can we find you?
I overall liked the fourth episode a lot. I think as far as it was just really different, and I enjoyed that part. But yeah, it's I still have a lot to watch, so I'm going to be catching up. And yeah, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram and YouTube, and Phoenician Rises is my handle. So if you just type that in, you can find all my links there. Thank you.
Perfect. All right. What about you, Mike? What are your final thoughts on these two?
Like I said, I had a difficult time with both of them for different reasons, obviously. I'm giving them probably 6.5, 7s at the most, maybe. But I still think that it's the highest production value show it's out there right now. I'm always amazed at the quality of the show itself. Although I don't necessarily like some of the stories, I still will check back in next week for sure. And yeah, hopefully it, like I said, it calms down a little bit on the politics, gets back into storytelling and just having a great time. It's supposed to be fun. I'm not supposed to think about it. I'm supposed to just enjoy it. And yeah, so I'll see you back here in 2 episodes. We're doing 2-episode chunks.
Yeah, that's kind of where we're at right now, every other week.
Yep,
But,
I think it's
do you
a
have
good
anything
idea.
do you have anything you want to plug or talk about? That's
Sure,
coming up for you?
Tomorrow night over on the Renaissance Nerds channel is my show. It's called Sci-Fi and Fantasy Saturday Nights. I'm going to be, me and my co-host Adam are going to be talking about Flash Gordon. That's when we settled on. So if you're a Flash Gordon fan, you might want to come by and check that out. And then on Sundays, of course, we have the roundtable. Jed will be there, of course. And then on Thursday, the 30th, I believe is when Thursday or when the 30th is. I think it's a Thursday. Yeah, Thursday. I'm going to meet on my channel, OBG70. We're going to be doing deep dives episode per episode of Stargate SG-1. And then we'll, of course, eventually end up on Stargate Atlantis. But we have 10 seasons of SG-1 to cover. And we'll be doing probably 1 or 2 episodes per show. So check us over there. Make sure you like and subscribe and all those things over on my channel. Help me get to 5 million subs.
Did you mention Monday? Sorry.
What's on Monday?
Train to Busan.
Yes. Okay. So, I skipped over it. So on Mondays, Alexis and Jed and I, we have a show on my channel, OBG70. We are doing everything Asian, cinema, entertainment, some manga, some anime, some Korean dramas, some Japanese dramas.
Bollywood?
No Bollywood. No Bollywood. That's for Zax to do. Let Zax do his Bollywood stuff. So yeah, check us out. We are 5:30, so same time period every Monday, and we have a lot of fun. I think it's gonna be great. And we're doing Train to Busan this time.
Really,
Jed still has to see it, or did you see it yet?
Oh, I'm gonna watch it on Monday. I want to be.
You're gonna watch it on Monday. Okay, all right. I usually watch it a couple times.
That's normally what I've done.
Don't watch the second. Don't watch number 2.
I'm not planning on it.
Yeah, first one's pretty good though. And so we'll talk about it and we'll get our takes on it. Yeah, Monday, 5:30.
Looking forward to it.
Question. You talked about Stargate. Is Stargate SG-1 the best place to begin the Stargate
yes.
franchise, so to speak?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
First I wasn't sure if I had to watch the movie, the old Kurt Russell movie.
Oh yeah, if you haven't seen that, you should start it because SG-1 takes up where that left off and it plugs some of the plot holes, some of the things they didn't consider.
So is it a sequel to the movie, or is it like
it is a sequel, but it's not made by the same creators. It was licensed through MGM, and so they made it different characters, of course, or different actors playing the same characters. It's season 1, like the Next Generation season 1, has some hits and misses, but overall it's a very good experience. By the time you hit season 3, it becomes really great. And just like any of the other science fiction that's been around, like just always starting off, it's kind of shaky and it gets going, but it's very episodic. So there's overall story arc kind of in the background, but it's very much like every single episode is a new experience. It's a new adventure they're doing something different. So, and in that case, it's a lot like Star Trek Next Generation, a new planet, a new nebula, a new enemy, a new whatever. It's a different thing, but I found it stronger than the Next Generation for the most part.
Okay.
That's my opinion. So
Great. All right. Well, Nerdporial Lifeform, it was great to finally meet you, man. We've been chatting a little bit. Thank you so much for coming on my channel. It was great to have you. Had a great discussion. What are your final thoughts on these 2 episodes? And do you have anything that you want to plug?
Sure. My final thoughts. I thought episode 3 was a very interesting episode. It covered a lot of. It made me think of a lot of Star Trek tropes. I thought it was stronger than episode 2, but nowhere near as strong as episode 1. So I'd say I gave episode 3 with like between 8 or 8.5 out of 10, roughly in that area. I liked the twist at the end with Denal, the Tron, Q, Nagilum type of non-corporeal or weird incorporeal entity. If she even is one, maybe she is a humanoid after all.
Yeah.
Who knows? We'll see. We'll find out more in the future. Episode 4, I was concerned about it being too on the nose at first. I rewatched it, and there was that one scene that about the one scene that I felt was unnecessary. But I'm very excited because once again, it was a game-changing episode. This was an episode where that going forward, this is a huge deal. And I didn't think we'd get one like this for not until like the end of the season. So I'm kind of surprised that they did something like this in episode 4. So it makes me curious about the rest of I'm even more excited for the rest of the season now because of this. So did I like it as much as episode 1? They're kind of tied for me because episode 1 had its I loved the concept. But this episode was a huge game. Like this episode was such a huge game changer, and that's why I have it tied. If it wasn't for the heavy-handed aspect of a few things, on some things, I probably would have ranked it a little bit higher. But that's just, it's just a small nitpick on my part. So that's where I'm at in those 2 episodes. I can't wait for next week. Next week is going to be called A Tale of Two Topas. That's going to be episode 5. So we're going to definitely see Clyden and the Mocklins again. So I'm curious where they're going to go next with the Mocklins. Since the last time we saw them, they were fighting. Bortus and Kelly were fighting off a Mocklin raid against this one female village that was trying to hide from the main government. Right. So there's a lot of tension there. And there were threats of leaving the Union, so that's kind of why I'm curious what they're going to do next with this race, because now that now with the Krill being the enemies again, they need all the help they can get. So they're going to have to appeal to their whims to keep them happy. So I'm curious what's going to happen next with that. So that's where I'm at with the Orville. So I can't wait. And up for next week, a certain scholar is going to be a special guest starring on my after show. So if you are willing to stay up till 11 p.m., which is my time when Hulu drops the Orville, watch the episode, and you watch the episode and you're like, I want to talk about this with people. Well, come to my after show. I do an after show, usually starts a little bit after midnight Central Time. And we talk about the episode. I usually have my 2 panelists with me, usually Spock's Friday Nights and Pacific 414. If you're not subscribed to them, definitely subscribe to them. Pacific 414 has been pretty good about he does his own reviews and he does his own reactions. So while I'm watching it by myself, because that's how I watch stuff, I like to watch stuff by myself and take notes. He does a reaction online. So if you want to watch it with him or watch it with anybody or be part of a watch show, watch it with him. It's pretty funny. He does some great reactions, especially the episode 2 one with the demon fly people and how they turn people they turn them into fly people. It was ridiculous. But yeah, so yeah, that's every week until the Orville ends. Better Call Saul. When Better Call Saul comes back on, I'm going to be doing the same thing, but those won't be nearly as late because Better Call Saul is airing during prime time. Remember prime time? I wish streaming services remember prime time
concept.
Yeah.
For real though.
Yeah, like these after shows are tough to do because not everyone stays up. People who are on the East Coast, tough for them because it's like 1 a.m. their time.
Oh yeah.
People on the West Coast, Pacific time, much easier. So
yeah, a lot easier for me.
But yeah, so I do after shows. Sometimes I do This Sunday, I'm doing a Trekporial stream with Baron Norman Tag. We're going to be talking about the best Scotty episodes of the original series, Star Trek, the original series. So come on by for that. And my current video project, I'm working on 2 video projects right now. One is one I've been planning for a long time. That's a Zelda Ocarina of Time retrospective. That's the Zelda game for the
played
N64.
that again. So
Yeah.
good. Love that game.
Yep, that was this is my follow because I just did a Mario 64 retrospective. Just released that a couple of weeks ago. So this is my next major project. So it's going to take me some time before I complete it, but because I'm still writing it. And I'm doing a first half of Better Call Saul final season review. So that's already written, and I just have to. There's gonna be spoilers. So if you haven't watched the show, don't watch it. So but that's what I'm working on. That's what I'm currently working on. I mean, future movie review is gonna be the original Planet of the Apes, and I have like my next 5. I have my next 5 videos planned, and after that, it's all up in the air. So there's an infinite things to do to make videos about. So, and I love it.
Perfect. That's great. Well, all these wonderful people are linked. Their channels below in the description. Go subscribe to every single one of them. They all do some incredible stuff, especially Alexis's video. I always have to shout this one out where she talks about the misconception of cultural appropriation. I love that video, so I'm always going to be shouting that one out. So yeah, definitely check that out if you're interested in that argument that's been going on. So yeah, subscribe to all of them. For me, I do daily videos, so check in every day for new videos. And then it's going to be busy live stream week for me. I've got Monday on Adam of the Renaissance Nerds channel for the Roundtable. I'm on the Firepod OBG70's channel Monday night for Asian culture and Train to Busan. Then I'm on the Mortality channel on Wednesday night, pretty late, and then just keeping going from there. Keep trucking. So, but anyway, that's all we have for tonight. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next video. I know. If you like what I do here and want to see good, compelling stories that Hollywood will no longer give you, check out my book series, Odyssey of a Phoenix, a mythological epic about philosophy, morality, and modern-day mental illness issues. Books 1, Down in Flames, and Book 2, Apocalypse Then, currently on sale. Book 3, Kill the Dark, coming soon.